181. The butterfly dyes the color, fixes the snake's position. The long platform beneath their feet and the surrounding stone walls were black. Riddle, the pool, and the pipes embedded in the stone were yellow. Ginny, Harry, Hermione, and Robin himself showed up as red. The 10-meter basilisk was a chaotic mix of all four colors. Russell, Robin saw the basilisk, its flat blue block head sliding toward them, and shouted, "Step back! The basilisk is 8 meters to the northeast." Hermione's hand shook as she raised her vinewood wand toward that direction and tried to sound calm. "Leglocker curse." Through Robin's perception, the vinewood wand projected a yellow block of magic that struck the great snake and dissolved into black mist. The basilisk paused, 3 seconds, then resumed its advance. "Hermione, you cast the Leglocker curse on a snake that doesn't have legs," Harry said incredulously. "Yes, I know, it's not appropriate, but I wanted to try," Hermione snapped, stubbornly refusing to admit she'd panicked. She raised her wand again. "Glacius." The vinewood wand spat a white beam. The basilisk slid west, the white magic striking the stone and exploding into a dozen ice pillars. 7 meters directly ahead, Robin warned. "Glacius." "Petrificus totalis." "Arania exumi." 3 spells flew at once. The basilisk shook its head to dodge the first 2, but the third hit its forehead. Its head, attached to the neck, snapped back 180 degrees for 3 seconds, then it lunged forward 2 meters, gaping and hissing. The breath it expelled smelled like 100 rotting corpses stacked together, abominable. Robin thought wryly that it hadn't brushed its teeth in 1,000 years. Of course it stank. Incendio. The wall of orange flame forced the basilisk back 2 meters. Only when the fire died did it flick its tail and move forward again. 5 meters to the northwest, cast the fire spell. Okay. Incendio rang through the Chamber of Secrets again and again. Under the barrage of flames, the basilisk retreated to the edge of the pool. "Idiots! Forward! They're right there! Rush them!" Riddle shrieked. "Robin, Hermione, force it into the pool, then pour oil and set it alight. Trap it in." Harry began, but his voice broke into a violent cough. Each cough dimmed the brightness of his red humanoid block a little. "Cough, cough. The air's thin. The ventilation's poor. Cough, cough. We can't keep casting Incendio. We can hold out, but Ginny can't." Hermione's face tightened. Without the fire to harry it, the basilisk attacked fiercely again, dodging spells with unnerving speed and forcing the 3 of them back toward the stone wall. "What do we do now?" Harry asked anxiously, throwing an Arania exumi toward his front right. Robin erected an ice wall in front of him and noticed a semicircular yellow block 2 meters high nearby, one of the large pipes. "Get in the pipe. To the right, 3 meters. There's a big pipe. Go now." Harry and Hermione sprinted 3 meters to the right and dove into the pipe. Robin closed the entrance by conjuring several ice walls, then ran after them. Bang! Bang! The basilisk slammed into the ice again and again, breaking each barrier until it could slither after them. The sound of its crawling was like a crazed drum, rattling their nerves. Harry pulled a black cloth over his forehead and led the others through the maze of pipes with many intersections until they reached a dead end. A massive circular iron grate blocked their way. Each iron bar was wrist-thick. The grate sat in an iron frame bolted to the pipe wall with a rusty lock. Hermione pressed her wand against the keyhole and whispered, "Alohomora." The lock did nothing. No clink, no loosened rust. From the distant shadows came the dull, increasing thuds of the basilisk hitting the ice. "I'll go back and hold it off. You two figure out how to get through this grate and take the pipe to the right ahead. It's very damp, more likely to lead to the Chamber of Secrets." Riddle's a memory. Magic can't truly hurt him. He can only draw ink from the diary and splash it. If you can get Ginny out, I think Madame Pomfrey might have a way to restore her. Those dozen ice walls will hold it for a little while. Hermione planted herself against the pipe to stop Harry from bolting back. Robin picked up a stone the size of a bludger and smashed it against the iron lock. The stone splintered into 5 pieces. The lock didn't so much as scratch. He pulled out a magic saw. Zzz! The teeth were dull. The lock only lost a little rust. Wire cutters, useless. Bang, bang. The impacts grew louder. The basilisk was getting closer. "Hermione, let me through," Harry insisted. "No." "Harry, wait. I still have one trick." Robin turned his palm up and condensed 3 flames, red, yellow, and blue. With a twist of his wrist, the flames merged and crackled, coalescing into a surging black fire. He sent it at the lock. Sizzle, the glowing rust fell away as the lock heated and melted. The iron glowed bright red, and then with a clink, collapsed into a puddle of molten metal. "Go, save Ginny!" Harry yanked the grate open and rushed out. Hermione followed. After 5 or 6 steps, she checked and realized Robin hadn't followed. "Robin, come on!" Robin closed the grate behind them, and using the black fire, welded the grate to the iron frame embedded in the pipe wall. He called softly, "You two go on. I'll finish welding and catch up." Bang, bang, hiss hiss. Blood, bloody smell. Can't escape. Kill you. "Robin, it's catching up. Hurry," Harry shouted. "Don't worry. I've covered my eyes with the black cloth. Even if it stares at me, it can't affect me. I'll weld this shut so it can't get through or bite me. You two take the shortcut back quickly. Don't forget, our purpose in the chamber is to get Ginny out. Riddle's there, and she's in serious danger." Robin controlled the black flames with one hand and waved his wand with the other to speed the cooling of the already welded iron. "Okay, make sure you catch up as soon as you can." "Hermione, you must promise to." Her voice broke. She forced it down, turned, and ducked into the right-hand pipe with Harry. Robin focused and finished the welding. When the molten metal turned to dull gray iron, he pressed the black cloth over his eyes and activated Little Butterfly's butterfly vision. In the dark, he could still see. A huge blue block of a snake's head barreled toward him. When it opened its mouth in a furious hiss, 2 rows of yellow blocks of various lengths appeared within the blue block. Teeth. Bang, bang. The blue head struck the black iron grate. Clang. The grate vibrated violently. Robin could see 2 slender yellow blocks, fangs, embedded in the bars. No matter how the huge blue head shook, the yellow blocks stayed stuck. Chapter 182. Lord Voldemort, you have failed again. In the original story, when Ginny's life hung in the balance, Harry used the basilisk's venom to burn through the diary and bring everything to peace. Now, Robin pulled the diary from his chest, braced against the sickly stench of decay, and moved to the edge of the black iron grate. He gripped both ends of the book, set its center against the sharp tip of the yellow fang, and pressed down hard. Pfft! A gush of black ink spurted from the tear in the diary, splattering onto the floor and running down Robin's hands. "What have you done?" Riddle demanded angrily, sensing danger as he apparated into the chamber behind the grate. Robin held the diary up again, pressed the fang down through it, and didn't stop until it pierced clean through. Pfft! A larger stream of ink sprayed out, splashing across Robin. At the same time, a reverse triangular, front-to-back wound appeared across Riddle's chest. Robin yanked the fang free. Riddle shrieked, his face contorting. "No, stop! Stop it! Riddle, you're a memory. Magic can't hurt you. But if the diary carrying that memory is destroyed, will you still exist?" Robin said. "When you die, the soul and the life force you stole from Ginny will quickly return to her. Lord Voldemort, you have failed again." He pressed down on the diary once more, twisting it left and right to tear the hole wider. Ink surged from the rent. New gashes, one large, dozens of smaller, appeared across Riddle's body. He screamed, a high, blood-curdling wail. "My future self will kill you!" Riddle clutched at the openings that now riddled his arms and torso, unwilling to vanish. But when Robin drove the fang through the diary again and pulled it free, the wounds on Riddle began to glow. He dissolved into countless glowing green and blue motes. The green lights coalesced into a stream of stars that drifted toward the pipe on the right. The blue ones swirled around the iron grate, their light dimming. Robin whispered a spell and released the soul-splitting derivative, Little Gray. Little Gray saw the blue motes and howled with excitement, darting around like an out-of-control bludger and sucking every glowing blue dot into its belly. Burp. After a contented belch, Little Gray dropped to the floor. It wiggled and flailed, but it was too full to fly. "You're too full to move, aren't you?" Robin thought, and recalled Little Gray into the Rubik's Cube with a gesture of his wand. He was about to draw his wand properly and deal with the basilisk when a sharp, piercing scream from deep inside the right pipe made him drop everything and run toward it. The pipe sloped upward. He climbed 70 or 80 meters before it flattened. His foot slipped, he sat down, and suddenly he was in a speed-slide pipe. The walls were slick with mucus. He slid 10, maybe 20 meters, feeling the black cloth over his eyes creep up to his forehead, almost falling off, so he clutched it in place. Seconds later, he shot out of the pipe and, by inertia, through Salazar Slytherin's statue's mouth and into a free fall. No wonder Hermione screamed. Thud. Robin hit the water. He surfaced, slicked his hair back, wiped water from his eyes, and watched some of the green motes drift slowly into Ginny's body. He saw Hermione and Harry struggling to climb onto a long ledge. Neither of them had the black cloth over their heads anymore. Harry, Hermione, where are your blindfolds? Robin asked as he swam ashore. They fell off while we were sliding, Hermione replied. Robin, why are you covered in ink, and why does the diary have holes in it? Robin told them what had just happened. When he said Riddle was gone, both of them gasped. A weak groan came from against the far wall of the Chamber of Secrets. Ginny. They hurried over, without even wringing water from their clothes. Ginny opened her eyes and sat up, looking around in a daze. Her gaze landed on the perforated diary and she shuddered. Tears streamed down her face. I did it! I wanted to confess in the Great Hall this morning, but Percy messed everything up. I swear I didn't mean to. Riddle forced me. He controlled me. It's all right, Robin said. Riddle admitted he hypnotized you. You weren't conscious when any of it happened. Will I be expelled? No, Hermione said. Harry and I can both testify that you're innocent. The tension in Ginny's chest snapped. She flung herself into Robin's arms, sobbing. Hermione pulled her away. We don't have time for this. We need to get out of here. The basilisk is. A splash cut her off. Hiss. It's the basilisk. It's saying kill. Kill you all. What do we do? Harry cried. The basilisk surged from the pool, its monstrous shadow swallowing the stone walls, rows of razor teeth bared. Quick, the blindfolds. Close your eyes. They obeyed, fumbling the black cloths in place. Harry and Hermione cried out for help, thin and panicked. Suddenly, ethereal, piercing music drifted down from above. It grew stronger, like a drumbeat in the chest, filling them with exhilaration. Robin eased the blindfold up a sliver and peered through the slit. High above, circling like a great crane, was a red phoenix with shimmering golden tail plumes, singing the most beautiful music. Clutched in its golden talons was a huge red and black rooster. 5 seconds later, Fawkes himself descended to hover beside them. The rooster craned its neck and let out a long, continuous cock-a-doodle-doo. Thud. At the sound, the basilisk's body went limp and it collapsed at the edge of the pool. Robin pulled his blindfold down, activated his butterfly dive vision, strode to the pool's edge, and rained spells on the writhing creature. It was battered and nearly lifeless, but still bared teeth and hissed. Robin had no choice. He drew Kenzio's specially made fencing sword and plunged it into the basilisk's vital point. Pfft! Foul-smelling black blood sprayed over Robin's face. He didn't rage, he smiled. The totem beneath his left collarbone was heating and stinging, proof that his strike had hit home. He murmured, "Contain all," and brought the basilisk into the Rubik's Cube. Then he flicked his wand and conjured a dozen ice blocks the size of stools, and with a sweep, splash, the ice plunged into the pool and vanished. Robin tore off his blindfold and glanced suspiciously at the red and yellow striped ribbon tied to the big rooster's leg. If he remembered correctly, the chicken he'd seen in his backyard last Christmas had worn the same strip of cloth on its leg. 183. Cock Messenger, Crazy Girl. You can open your eyes now. The basilisk is dead, Robin shouted. Hermione let her eyelids part to a thin slit. She looked around, and when she saw no sign of the serpent, she opened them fully. Robin, where's the basilisk's body? Harry asked. It slid into the pool. Want me to fetch it? Robin rolled up his sleeves as if to go down and retrieve it. No, let its bones lie sealed in the Chamber of Secrets forever. Chirp, chirp, Fawkes cried, circling near the iron ladder as if urging them to hurry. The four of them passed the empty, dim platform, climbed the rusty ladder, and came back up into the stone tunnel. Swoosh! The stone door closed gently behind them, and the two great serpents coiled together once more. They followed the tunnel, turned a dozen corners, and came to the rubble wall. Through a gap the size of a bicycle wheel, they could see Ron hunched over, heaving stones aside. Ron! Robin called. Ron dropped his stone and scrambled around. When he saw Ginny through the gap, his face lit up like a sunrise. Ginny, you're alive! That's brilliant! He squeezed through the gap and spread his arms to hug her. Ginny stepped aside. Ginny, Don't be frightened. It's over now. Ron blinked and pointed behind them. Huh, Phoenix and a rooster? So those red flashes I saw earlier were them. Robin, Harry, what happened down there? We'll explain later. First, back to the lavatory. Where's Lockhart? Harry asked as they climbed out. Ron smirked. He's playing with bones at the end of the pipe. By the time everyone had climbed through, their wand light showed them the end of the tunnel where Lockhart sat, instinctively covering the back of his head. Then he put on his spotless, innocent smile. Hello, have you chewed on these bones? No, but I'd very much like to turn you into bones too, Ron said, raising an eyebrow. Lockhart's smile froze. He lowered his head and returned to his little game of assembling bone fragments. At his feet, a small rabbit made of bones already sat completed. Hermione went to the mouth of the pipe and peered into the darkness. How do we get back up? Robin looked to Fawkes, who was preening beneath a wing. Dumbledore said a phoenix can carry an extraordinary load. We can hold on to one another and let it fly us up. It's not much bigger than a rooster. Can it really do it? Ron doubted. We won't know until we try, Robin said. He tied the rooster to his belt, grabbed Fawkes's talons with both hands. Harry and Ron each took hold of one of Robin's ankles. Lockhart grabbed Ron's ankle and bit his calf with a ridiculous grin. Hermione clutched Harry's ankle, and Ginny wrapped herself around Hermione's waist. Chirp, chirp, Fawkes shrieked once, beat its wings and launched into the pipe. A sudden lightness washed over them. Robin felt as if a gust of wind might send him floating away. It's amazing. It's like flying. It's incredible. Lockhart's excited shouts echoed down the thick pipe. Moments later, their feet touched solid, level ground with a creak as the sink lowered back into place, and the heavy water pipe was covered once more. You're alive? Myrtle's voice echoed from the partition as she sat on top of the cubicle door, staring with wide, watery eyes. No need to sound so disappointed, Harry said helplessly. Myrtle shrugged, her pockmarked face flushed a strange silver white. I kept thinking, if you died, I'd gladly give up half ownership of this stall's flushing toilet, hee. With that, she darted into the bowl, her eerie, perverted cackling filling the lavatory. Where to now? Ron asked. The cubicle door opened from within, and the girl with waist-length tumbling hair stepped out to the sink. She washed her hands and said, as casually as if commenting on the weather, Before you go, can I have Xiaohong back? Xiaohong? Robin untied the large rooster from his belt. The bird flapped, eager to spring toward the sink. Luna took the rooster and began to smooth its comb. You put pipe on the basilisk's description page, Robin asked, remembering Luna's earlier remark about spiders inside, rooster outside. Yes, Luna said, unruffled. I got to the answer faster than you. What's your reasoning? Hermione asked, stepping forward. Luna tapped her temple with a finger. Intuition. Intuition isn't a substitute for evidence, Hermione protested. Conclusions need careful, logical analysis and verification. The process doesn't matter if the result is right, Luna interrupted. You thought and investigated for nearly a year and still came to the same place my intuition did, didn't you? Xiaohong, let's go to the vegetable patch. I can catch slugs for you, Luna said to the rooster. No wonder its feathers were so sleek. Luna left with Xiaohong. Hermione stamped her foot in frustration. No wonder some pupils call her the loony girl, she muttered. Fawkes flew to the office door and ruffled its feathers, gesturing for them to follow. All right, Hermione, don't be cross. Hurry, Robin urged. They hurried along the corridor and stopped at the door to Professor McGonagall's office. Knock-knocking. Come in. Robin pushed the door open. The six of them stood there, splattered with slime, mud, and bruises. Robin had ink stains and a smear of dark blood on him. In the office, Mrs. Molly and Mr. Arthur Weasley sat with tears in their eyes, staring at them in astonished relief. Professor McGonagall clutched at her chest, breath coming fast, and Dumbledore stood by the fireplace with a small, relieved smile. Ginny! Mrs. Weasley rushed forward and hugged her youngest daughter as if she would never let go. Mr. Weasley joined in, wrapping his arms around them both. They didn't loosen their hold until Ginny's face had turned a deep beetroot red, and she began to cough. You saved him, Mrs. Weasley asked, wiping her eyes and looking to Ron for confirmation. He nodded sheepishly. How did you do it? She pressed. I'd like to know that too, Professor McGonagall said, sagging into an armchair, as if she might collapse from relief. Robin put the perforated remnants of the diary on the desk, and one by one, the four of them told everything. From the strange whispering at the start of term, Harry's help to Lockhart with replies, the discovery of the diary, to sneaking into the Chamber of Secrets, defeating Riddle and the Basilisk, and their return with the Phoenix's help. When they finished, Professor McGonagall snapped a wooden bookmark in two. After the Philosopher's Stone, I expected Voldemort to lie low, perhaps in the Albanian woods. I never imagined he'd hide in a broken diary, bewitching and manipulating a student into carrying out his will. He truly stops at nothing. 184. Stung by his own sword, Mr. Arthur Weasley grabbed Ginny's shoulder, eyes wide with shock. I've always told you, never trust any object that seems to think for itself unless you're certain you can control it. A diary that writes and talks is clearly not an ordinary object. Where did you get it? Dumbledore asked. I swear, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Will I be expelled? Ginny pleaded, looking toward the mantelpiece. The firelight flashed off Dumbledore's half-moon spectacles. Madame Pomfrey has just given the Mandrake restorative potion to the Basilisk's victims. They will wake in 2 or 3 hours, he said gently. Since no one has suffered permanent harm, and since even older, wiser wizards than Ginny have been deceived by Lord Voldemort, the school will not expel Ginny, nor will she be required to write an essay or serve detention. Ginny, you look very pale. Go back to your dormitory and rest. Mrs. Weasley, a cup of hot chocolate before bed will calm her nerves. All right, Professor Dumbledore. Mrs. Molly gave Ron a sharp look, then shepherded Ginny out of the office, Arthur trailing behind them. Dumbledore turned back to his desk, smiling, and glanced toward the corner of the room on his front right. Defeating the Basilisk and rescuing the students is a remarkable achievement. Yet one of those who experienced the adventure has been conspicuously silent. Professor Lockhart, why so modest all of a sudden? Professor? Oh, well, I never expected to amount to so much. I never imagined. Lockhart's voice broke off, bewildered. Dumbledore regarded the four people standing before him with a knowing look. When we were down there, he seized my wand and attempted to cast a memory charm on Miss Granger, but the spell backfired. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. Oh, Lockhart, you've been wounded by your own sword. My sword? Lockhart fumbled at himself in confusion. I haven't a sword. Losing your memory is not necessarily a bad thing, Professor McGonagall said, the sternness of her face softening into something like a smile. Minerva, would you take Professor Lockhart to the hospital wing? And everything that happened today certainly calls for celebration. Please notify the kitchens. It's already dark, so the feast will likely begin around 11. Tell them the children needn't change into uniforms. Pajamas will be perfectly acceptable. A pajama party? Hermione looked at Ron in surprise, mind racing. How had he guessed the school would allow that? Very good, sir. These four are in your care, she added, leading the bewildered Lockhart out of the office. According to our records, you have broken over 100 school rules since the start of term, McGonagall added. Ron's face dropped. If he were expelled, Mrs. Weasley would make sure the whole castle heard her. Will I be expelled? He blurted. You and your sister share similar thoughts, Dumbledore said gently. Your actions technically meet the standard for expulsion. However, I do not intend to punish you. On the contrary, each of you will receive a special contribution award to the school and 100 house points. Thank you. Ron's face went bright. I should be the one to say thank you. Down in the chamber, I'm sure you showed true loyalty to me. Otherwise, Fawkes would never have come and helped. The phoenix drifted down to Dumbledore's lap, and he stroked its wings. Harry, I have noticed you've been troubled from the moment you came in, even when you heard about the reward. Something is still on your mind, isn't it? Harry's brow knit tighter. Sir, I've found that Riddle and I have many similarities. Neither of us has parents. We were both fostered as children. Neither of us wants to go home for the vacations, and both of us can speak Parseltongue. I even wondered whether I might be a distant descendant of Salazar Slytherin. You are not a born Parselmouth, Dumbledore said. If I am not mistaken, when Lord Voldemort attacked you and left you with that scar, he also transferred part of his magic to you. Transferred to me? Harry said, stunned. Yes. It was not deliberate on his part, But it happened, Dumbledore explained gently. The killing of Lily Potter split his soul. A fragment of it attached itself to you, making you an involuntary Horcrux, something even Voldemort did not intend. Harry looked as though struck. Dumbledore continued, when you were being sorted, the sorting hat considered Slytherin might help you achieve greatness. Because I asked it to, Harry said. That's the difference between me and Riddle. Abilities do not determine who we are, our choices do. Relief eased Harry's expression. Thank you, sir. That helps. Dumbledore opened his desk drawer, took out a fresh piece of parchment, ink, and a quill. All right, go and get a good night's sleep. Come down for the feast when you wake. As for me, I must write a release form. Our gamekeeper should be allowed to return to the school, and I ought to place an advertisement in the Daily Prophet. Professor Lockhart is no longer suited to be Defense Against the Dark Arts. Alas, he added ruefully, people will once again call this post unlucky. The wooden door was flung open with a crash. Lucius Malfoy marched in, cane in hand, eyes blazing. Behind him shuffled Dobby, wrapped in bandages. Harry recognized the house elf at once. Dobby twitched his nose, then bowed low, staring at the hem of Lucius's black robes with fear. Lucius looked down at him with cold contempt. I'll settle this with you later, he hissed, before turning his glare on Dumbledore. Don't block the way, boy. He shoved Ron aside with his cane as he climbed the stone steps and spoke with scathing accusation. So you've returned. You actually disregarded the Board of Governors' temporary suspension order for the headmaster and came back to Hogwarts on your own authority. 185. Dobby, the new little chef. Dumbledore answered Lucius's question with a calm smile. The governors, upon learning Ginny Weasley was taken into the Chamber of Secrets, all insisted I return to the school immediately. How ridiculous, Lucius snapped. Some of the governors even said that if you didn't sign a temporary suspension order, you would curse their families. Anger flared in Lucius's eyes. All I have ever cared about is the school and the safety of its students. Have you found the culprit? He glanced toward Ron. Yes? Then who is it? Lucius demanded. Dumbledore winked at the four of them and held up the diary. Lord Voldemort. Lucius's expression fell. Of course, and this time he's making use of a diary to manipulate others. Dumbledore turned the diary so the hole in its pages let him read Lucius's face. Around the fireplace, Robin and the others watched Dobby. The house elf's large, tennis ball-sized green eyes stared meaningfully at Lucius's back. He pointed to the diary, then to Lucius's long black robes, then clutched his own temples and tapped them hard. When no one seemed to get it, Robin pantomimed bumping into someone, picking something up and writing in a diary. At once the others understood. Lucius had arranged for the diary to be slipped to Ginny. Harry nodded at Dobby, who retreated to a corner and began pulling at his ears. Lucius, feeling as if someone had read his thoughts, said coolly, "So that's how it is." Fortunately, the children saw through Lord Voldemort's trick, Dumbledore went on. Otherwise, if people learned that the daughter of the author of the Muggle Protection Act was attacking Muggle-born students, the damage to relations between Muggles and wizards would be irreparable. Lucius, I hope that the items Lord Voldemort used while at school will not fall into innocent hands again. Otherwise, Arthur Weasley will do everything in his power to trace their source and punish those responsible. Lucius's face darkened. He rubbed the serpent's head on his cane as if to pull out the concealed wand, then forced himself to rein in his temper. Farewell, Dobby, let us go. He turned toward the door. Dobby followed frantically. Lucius kicked him out roughly. The sound of thudding and Dobby's pained cries echoed down the corridor. What can we do for Dobby? Harry asked, unable to bear seeing him hurt. Socks, Robin whispered. Socks? It's the only way a house elf can gain freedom. The master must give him an item of clothing. Since the diary came from Lucius, it should be returned to him, Robin continued. Judging by the way he keeps his robes immaculately pressed, never takes off his gloves, and always slicks his hair back, he's extremely fastidious. The diary is dirty and tattered. If something were tucked inside, he'd probably never open it. He'd toss it to Dobby without a second thought. Harry's eyes lit up as he looked toward Dumbledore's desk. Professor, take it. It's of no use to me, Dumbledore said. And the feast preparations start in a few hours. The kitchens must be short-staffed, Robin added softly. In the original story, after Dobby gained freedom, he couldn't find work because house elves were expected to serve without pay. Later, Dobby and Winky came to work in the Hogwarts kitchens. Dobby refused my offer of 10 galleons a week and 2 days off. He negotiated for 1 galleon a week and 1 day off a month. I think the kitchens are about to gain another member. Harry, go tell Dobby the news. All right, Professor. Harry snatched the diary and dashed from the office. Hermione and Ron followed. Robin brought up the rear. As they reached the door, Dumbledore called to Robin, waved his hand, and a small, deep blue, walnut-sized round bottle appeared on the desk. He stepped out from behind the desk and handed it to Robin. "This is a gift from Fawkes," Dumbledore said. With a soft clang, the phoenix settled on Robin's shoulder and nuzzled his hair. Robin produced a handful of bamboo rice. The bird devoured it with delight. "Use the contents of the bottle wisely." Fawkes watched sad fairy tales all night, Dumbledore added with a small smile. Fawkes, having his secret exposed, swallowed the rice, flicked his golden tail feathers, and flew away. "All right, go catch up with Harry and the others. Oh, and remember, sometimes death is for a better reunion." Robin memorized the words and hurried after the others. He ran until he caught up with them on the grand staircase, where Lucius stood at the landing, his complexion ashen. He lurched, recovered, and drew his wand from his cane, aiming it at the group above. Dobby raised his arm, pressing his thumb to his middle finger as if preparing to snap. "You may leave, Lucius Malfoy," he said. "I forbid you to harm Harry Potter." "Potter," Lucius spat, "one day your end will be the same as your meddlesome parents, dead in." Dobby bared his teeth, and Lucius swallowed his words. He straightened his robes and hurried down the stairs. "Mr. Potter gave Dobby his freedom and even helped Dobby find such a good job," Dobby said earnestly. "How can Dobby repay you?" Moonlight pooled through the window and made Dobby's eyes shine. "It wasn't entirely my doing, Dobby," Harry replied. "I only ask one thing." "Anything at all," Dobby exclaimed. "Don't try to protect me anymore," Harry said. Dobby gave an awkward, sheepish grin. "Dobby will try his best. Dobby, go to Professor McGonagall's office and find Dumbledore. He'll discuss your salary and benefits," Robin instructed. Dobby snapped his fingers with a loud pop. Instantly, the bandages and bruises on him and the others vanished. He bowed deeply in thanks and trotted off toward the office. Ron bounded up the stairs, rubbing his aching back and urging the others to hurry. The four of them climbed to the 8th floor in one go, passed through the common room, and returned to their dormitories to rest. In the boys' tower, after Robin washed and drew his curtains, his consciousness drifted into his inner world. He walked up to the giant Rubik's Cube in his mind and studied each square. In a yellow square filled with mountains and dense forests, he saw a massive snake, green, with red feathers on its head. It convulsed, snapping its neck, and spat out bones. A meter away lay a dozen bloody rabbit skeletons scattered across the ground. 186. In this restless season, why don't you two take a break? Robin beckoned, and the square, obeying his will, floated slowly before him. In the bottom left corner of the square was a small, verdant snake totem. He clicked it, and a light screen projected from it. Name, none. Species, basilisk, level SS class. Personality, bloodthirsty, irritable, stubborn. Physical condition, weak, multiple contusions, splenic hemorrhage, treatment period, 1 month. Skills, King's Gaze, maintain eye contact with an enemy for 10 seconds to paralyze them for 10 minutes. Note, uninterrupted eye contact for 3 minutes can be fatal. Potent corrosive poison, sprays a linear stream of venom that corrodes skin. The toxin spreads throughout the body within 30 seconds. Long serpent's acupoint, detects tunnels in mountains, underground, or under riverbeds. Magic power, 13,000. Combat power, 10,000. 3 minutes of eye contact? The enemy isn't that stupid, Robin muttered. He named the basilisk Quihuan and waved the square back to its place. Then he summoned a purple square and checked it. Little Gray's incomplete soul treatment period had changed from 9,998 years to 8,998 years. That confirmed the soul fragments in the diary could indeed be digested and absorbed by Little Gray. As the purple square settled, Robin's consciousness drifted back into the real world, and he fell into a deep sleep. At 11:40, a knock woke the three of them. Fred and George burst in, grabbed their wrists, and dragged them downstairs. The great hall on the first floor had been made cozy and warm. Stone walls hung with stuffed rabbits, foxes, and owls, and hundreds of candles with warm flames floated in midair. The four long dining tables were stacked with goodies: cheesy mashed potatoes, pan-fried lamb chops, chicken strips, and steaming hot chocolate. The most peculiar thing was that everyone was in pajamas. Neville wore loose, light brown pajamas covered in Trevor the Toad prints. Ginny smiled, cheeks flushed, in a faded floral nightgown thanks to Fred and George's teasing. Draco sulked in silky satin pajamas. His face was longer than a donkey's. Hermione's light purple round-neck two-piece pajamas were both conventional and oddly personal, printed with magic gestures and spells. There was a commotion as Lavender hurried over, kissed Ron, and half-pushed him into a seat while feeding him cookies. Once the four were seated, those who had been petrified by the basilisk began walking, very much alive, into the great hall. Penelope Clearwater, still beautiful, glanced affectionately at Percy and went to the Ravenclaw table. Nearly headless Nick drifted down the aisles, his head dangling. Everyone greeted him warmly, and Seamus joked about how ghosts took Mandrake restorative draught. Nick said he had been fanned into a sealed little room filled with vaporized potion and steamed for 2 or 3 hours until he softened. Colin clung to Harry's hand and chirped his nicknames, and Seamus teased that Colin could be the minister of the Harry Potter fan club. Justin stood beside Robin, bowing and apologizing over and over, until Dumbledore, sitting at the head table, rose to speak. Only then did Justin relent and return to his seat. Before the feast began, Dumbledore delivered several pieces of good news. First, in light of recent events, the school exams were canceled. Second, Gryffindor had defended the House Cup with an outstanding 785 points. Third, Gilderoy Lockhart would be leaving to search for his memories and would no longer be the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Fourth, a release order had been sent to Azkaban, and the game reserve keeper would be returning soon. A gasp swept the tables. People banged the wood and cheered until the castle seemed to tremble. Flitwick and Sprout joined in the applause. Lockhart had indeed interfered with charms and herbology for the past year. At 1:30 a.m., the door creaked open, and Hagrid, wrapped in a moleskin coat, lumbered in. Ron, still raw from the spider ordeal, snapped, "Following spiders, I almost died there, you know?" Hagrid gave an apologetic smile, patted Ron on the shoulder a little too heartily, and sent him stumbling onto a dessert stand. Hagrid took his place at the head table and guzzled honey mead. When his face flushed, he leaned over and kissed Professor Sprout on the cheek. Sprout smiled and poured another drink. After a few more gulps, Hagrid broke out in spots, stiffened, and then collapsed on the table, snoring so loudly some plates rattled. Robin thought wryly about Hagrid's fondness for overdoing it. Last time it had been McGonagall, this time Sprout. Hagrid needed to drink less. The wild feast wound down with the dawn. With exams canceled and classes disrupted by the attacks, what should have been exam and grading weeks turned into a frantic remedial week. Lockhart had been transferred to St. Mungo's in London, so no one had to participate in his absurd reenactments of heroic deeds anymore. The Board of Governors had met in haste and unanimously voted to remove Lucius Malfoy from the board. With his heir failing and his father disgraced, Draco Malfoy stopped strutting. He wandered the castle sullen as if some 8 million galleons were owed to him. The day before the holidays, Robin told Hermione and the others the truth. He had a small house with a yard in Hogsmeade. Ron gaped. Hermione only nodded as if she'd guessed all along. Harry peppered Robin with questions, far more interested than Robin would have expected. Robin told Harry that with a permission form signed by his guardian, he could visit the village on certain weekends in his 3rd year. Harry's inward thought was that Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia would never sign such a form. The next morning, Robin held the scrap of paper with the Dursleys' phone number that Harry had given him and watched the Hogwarts Express pull away. Then he avoided company, slipped into the Whomping Willow Shrieking Shack secret passage, and made his way back to Hogsmeade. The courtyard gate creaked as he pushed it open. He saw a small pond about 1.5 meters across dug beneath a golden chain tree. A thick layer of sand ringed the pond, and atop the sand lay a red and white striped blanket. Beside it was a miniature lounge chair where Lalisa, lightly dressed, reclined while Grant fed her. Grant finished a plate of diced fruit and wiped the corner of his mouth with a napkin. Robin stood in the doorway and half laughed at the sight. Summer was a restless season, but with people in the yard, couldn't they be a little more discreet? He walked around the pond and opened the house door. The first thing that caught his eye was a beautiful curve of a back, soft and graceful like a shooting star across a night sky. Nagini turned her head, alarmed, and then relaxed when she saw him. "It's you. Help me," she said. "Okay," Robin replied. Nagini pressed her delicate back into the thin fabric. Robin, with one hand, pulled up the milky white zipper, his fingertips sliding along her spine. Zip! The zipper reached the top, and he withdrew his hand. Nagini tucked the stray wisps of hair that had fallen over her chest behind her ears. When her hair swayed, Robin caught a faint scent of iris. He stepped back a few paces to take in her outfit. She wore a pale blue, fitted long dress with a very wide neckline in both front and back. Her curves were visible through the fabric, but the fresh pleated lotus leaf cuffs softened the look. On the long table beside them lay piles of lace, white pearls, scissors, tape measures, evidence that the dress had been tailored specifically for a generous figure. It was obvious the gown strained a little to contain Nagini's proportions. "Are you making clothes for someone else?" Robin asked. "Yes," Nagini smiled. "I set up a little stall for custom ready-to-wear. This is a birthday dress ordered by a girl from the village. The stall's only been open a couple of months. Orders are thin. After this one, who knows when the next will come." She turned in front of the full-length mirror, rotating her waist to check for any needed alterations. "Don't worry. With the cinched waist, the cutouts, the pleats, and the pearl trim, she'll look dazzling and innocent all at once. She'll be an advertisement walking around." "I'll take your word for it," Robin said. Nagini changed back into her usual dark purple dress and started tidying the fabric on the table. Robin remembered Luna and Xiao Hong and asked, "What happened to the roosters in the backyard?" "Not given away," Nagini said. "Sold. About half a month ago, when I was delivering clothes to a middle-aged witch, I met a little girl with long, golden curls. She was knocking on doors, asking if anyone kept roosters. She was still knocking when I finished my deliveries, and since there were a few roosters in the coop, I sold her one." She opened a drawer and took out a parchment scroll. Before she left, she even gave me a magic map of Britain. "Oh, by the way, the fish tank seems off. Be careful when you go to the study later." 2 days earlier, Big Fatty had bumped Ron's head and delivered a note to Robin. The clownfish in the study looked listless, and the tank water was murky. Robin had promised Hermione they'd watch the bellflowers bloom together, and Teacher Zhao was strict about tutoring, so he'd asked Nagini to keep an eye on the tank. Now that he had the map, he went upstairs to check. As soon as he pushed open the study door, a rush of cold air blew in, slamming the door almost shut and making him squint. He tried to close the window but couldn't pull it. The breeze sent him groping for the nearest latch. Click, the window swung shut and the draft died away. When he opened his eyes, the water in the fish tank looked like spilled ink. He stepped to the desk and peered over the rim. The water was pitch black. He couldn't see anything inside. Oddly, it didn't smell foul. Instead, it gave off a faint, indescribable freshness. "Nini," he called. No answer. He tapped the glass a few times. Not a ripple disturbed the surface. He found 3 small magic lamps on the desk and snapped them on. Bright beams cut through the black water and revealed a strange scene. The darkness was not simply dye, but countless dust-sized black particles suspended throughout. At the bottom, 2 sunflower-shaped dark masses swayed, sea anemones, and 2 red, bead-like lights darted through the shadowy fronds. Red beads, clownfish eyes. But Nini's eyes had always been dark. He remembered the first time he'd seen them, the abyssal stare that had made his skin crawl. Nini. The red lights stopped as if they'd hit a wall, paused 3 seconds, then shot off again. When he tapped the tank, they reacted to the sound, darting to the side. He moved a finger upward along the glass, and the red lights rose with it. Draw a circle, and they circled. Confirmed, the 2 red lights were Nini and whatever companion she'd become. Curious about the green beads tucked in the anemone's waists, he found 2 long chopsticks and prodded the anemone. The red lights bolted back into the shadows. The fish traced S-shaped paths, and tiny wood chips began floating up like sawdust. He plucked one up. The chopstick was broken shorter, the splintered end full of deep bite marks. He grabbed a fine mesh strainer and skimmed the surface. Then he pushed the strainer down into the shadow to scoop out one of the beads. Sizzle. A purple current leapt up 2 centimeters above the center between the two red lights, racing along the strainer and toward him. Electricity crawled through his body, and he hit the floor. When he recovered, he smacked the water with an open palm and said helplessly, "Nini, stop being willful, okay?" Under the lamps, the red lights shot up. With a sudden splash, one of the fish hurled itself out of the tank. It was no longer the little clownfish he knew. Its body was flattened and catfish-like, with cypress leaf growth sprouting from its gills and belly. 2 rows of sharp, inward-slanting teeth lined a wide mouth. The skin was wet and sticky, a grayish-brown, and between its bright red eyes, a hard spine jutted out, crackling with violet electricity at the tip. Robin barely had time to think about scanning the mutation when the fish snapped at the web of skin between his thumb and index finger. Blood spurted out, and the creature swallowed greedily. Red dripped back into the black water. When the skin in his hand had nearly gone pale, and no more blood would come, the spine on the fish's head lengthened by 2 centimeters, and the crackling turned into a shimmering purple orb. The suspended particles in the water seemed to be pulled toward that light, flowing into the orb like iron filings to a magnet. The tank water changed color fast, from inky black to a light, blood-tinged pink. The fish released his hand and dove into the anemone, beating its fins until a shower of pea-sized green beads poured out. The diluted blood in the water condensed into thin red threads that twined and floated back into the beads. With a sharp snap, cracks appeared across the surfaces of the green beads. The fish pinched a cracked bead with its fin, swam to the surface, and flung it toward the doll's nest on the work table. Robin's wound throbbed. Ordinary salves did nothing. Pain gnawed down to the bone, sweat beading across his forehead. This little half-palm bite had venom potent as any he'd felt. Thinking quickly, he reached into the sea of consciousness, the small, dark blue circular bottle he kept there, pulled out the stopper, and let a single clear droplet fall on the ragged flesh. A white mist rose from the wound. The torn tissue folded back into place and fused together, the gap sealing cleanly. When the mist cleared, the pain eased. The flesh looked unbroken. He breathed out. That remedy was stronger than white moss. Robin put the small round bottle away and saw Nini flinging beads around, so he grabbed a colander and hurried over to help. This time, Nini didn't cause any more sparks or crunchy explosions. 5 minutes later, Robin tossed the towel aside. In the gray box on the desk lay 100 clean, comfortable, cracked green waste beads. Nini, exhausted, had collapsed with his eyes shut on top of the sea anemone. Robin picked up a magnifying glass. Through the fissures in the beads, he could see tiny, golden brown-eyed creatures curled up inside. The cracks widened slowly. The bugs shifted, angling their heads toward the openings. When a fissure reached about 2 millimeters, the bead shook violently. Something was breaking out of its shell. First came 2 wheat-awn-like antennae, each about a centimeter long. Then a trapezoidal head with large, hemispherical golden-brown eyes bulging on either side. A yellowish-green thorax followed, 6 thin legs, and an emerald abdomen capped with wrinkled wings. After 2 or 3 minutes, the wings unfurled and hardened. The bug rubbed its mandibles with its front legs and took off into the air. Robin silently cast a protective shield to keep the insects from escaping the study. In the next half hour, all the beads in the box became empty shells. Dozens of the little bugs buzzed wildly in the air. For a moment, Robin fantasized about the crackle of an electric swatter. That grim wish was answered in a far stranger way. The insects began an aerial nuptial flight. They paired and piled like a bizarre insect pyramid. Robust males climbed on top of clusters of 3 females. Small, weak males were sandwich-boxed between 2 others. There were one-on-one pairings too, tight, koala-like embraces. When they were excited, their abdomens stiffened into jade-hard spines. The air filled with dry, crisp snaps. After a long, chaotic while, the sound tapered off. Robin looked up, expecting a lull, and saw the females beginning to feed. their behavior eerily mantis-like. The green gauze-like females bent over the males and used their mouthparts to tear at heads. The males didn't struggle, some even fluttered their wings and seemed to present their heads willingly. It was brutal, and Robin felt a cold astonishment at the ritual. After consuming one or two males, a female's abdomen swelled to the size of an egg. She flew back to the gray box, arched her body, and laid 3 cashew-shaped, jade-like pale green beads. Then she dragged a slime-trailing tail across the outer scales of the box and writhed. Slime sprayed. Her abdomen collapsed into 2 layers of wrinkled skin. With a last convulsion, she fell from the scale onto the desk, lifeless. Where the slime had splashed, dark green, glowing patterns appeared across the gray scales of the box. The designs flashed for 3 seconds, then faded. Robin seized the moment, fetched 4 recording orbs, and placed them at the sides of the box, and brought out graph paper and a pen. He treated each tightly packed scale as a grid square and sketched the patterns as they flared. More females returned, laid their beads, and then scrawled their final slime signatures across the scales. Robin worked so fast he dared not blink, but the patterns unfolded across all faces of the box, the top and bottom plus the 4 sides, and he couldn't see them all at once. He replayed the recordings on fresh sheets of graph paper, using his magic to pause the playback as needed while he traced. 20 minutes later, he set down his pencil, taped the papers 2 by 2, and reconstructed 2 simplified treasure maps. The first map showed a vintage compass in the lower left, a sailboat in the lower right, and a sea route winding over islets, bays, and reefs. The route ended at a small island marked with a pennant and a glowing treasure chest. The island's coastline was oddly shaped, thin at the top, with jagged beaches jutting out like 3 claws. Overall, it looked like a 3-clawed turtle with its head extended. The second map was a zoomed-in plan of that 3-clawed turtle island. A compass sat in the lower right, its inner face engraved with an octagonal pattern. In the lower left, 2 footprints marked a landing point. From them, a trail snake wound through a coconut grove, a shell-strewn path, a pond, and a canyon. At the canyon, someone had drawn the flag and treasure chest. On the flagpole were a small fish and an octagonal star. Robin stared at the maps and felt a rush of excitement. He had something big to do this summer. A splash announced Nini's return. He had woken at some unknown moment, thrashed to the surface, and launched himself from the aquarium onto the desk. Nini waddled to the gray box, opened his wide, flat mouth, and began devouring the dead female bugs. Each time he swallowed a corpse, a green halo flashed around him. With every halo, the clownfish's appearance shifted. White stripes edged in black began to form on his tail. His flat body thinned and lengthened, his mouth contracted, and his inky eyes returned to their familiar black. In little bursts, the creature reverted to the clownfish that resembled a peeking opera clown. He crawled back to the tank, pressed his head against Robin's fingers, and looked up with tear-bright eyes as if asking forgiveness. Robin scooped him up, cupping him gently and setting him back in the water. Nini gripped his finger with a fin and rubbed his head affectionately. "Stop messing around. Let go," Robin murmured, already reaching to take him away again. He was eager to pinpoint the sea area of 3-clawed Turtle Island. At that moment, Nini leapt suddenly. His pitch-black eyes, deep and overwhelming as an abyss, blotted out Robin's vision and set his heart hammering. For a breathless moment, Robin felt a pressure at the base of his skull, an ancient presence brushing his mind. Then the shadow receded. Nini slumped onto the desk, limp. His bead-like gills and fins no longer moved. Robin turned him over and over in his palm, prodding the belly and head with trembling fingers. The truth was unavoidable. Nini was dead. Suddenly, without warning, Robin stroked the small fin, memory after memory flickering through his mind. The finger chase game, hiding inside the sea anemone when Scabbers scared him, the water dance when they moved to a new home, the way he mimicked answers like a possessed dolphin at Christmas. The last clear image that came to him was Dumbledore handing him the little round bottle. Dumbledore's words, "Sometimes death is for a better reunion," rose up in Robin's memory like a faint lantern. Grief tightened around him, then, slowly, that band loosened. He set Nini gently in the aquarium and folded the maps back into his pack. There was a destination now, and a plan. For the moment, acceptance edged in on the sorrow. Robin slipped Nagini back into the sea anemone, muttered a quiet spell, and tucked the fish tank and the gray box into his sea of consciousness. Then he sat down and unrolled the parchment Luna had given him. An enchanted map of Britain that zoomed in when you slid 2 fingers apart. Each pinch made the area shift from county to city, to district to town to village. At the maximum zoom, it showed the little lanes and even the signposts at their ends. After figuring out how it worked, Robin's gaze drifted to the Shetland Islands off northwest Scotland. He decided to start there. For hours, he zoomed and panned over the North Sea, the English Channel, the Irish Sea, the Eastern Atlantic, until his eyes ached. He couldn't find any island that looked like the 3-clawed turtle on his drawing. Maybe it was beyond Britain? A knock at the door interrupted him. He opened it to find Nagini in a dark purple dress. "It's already 2 in the afternoon," she said. "I learned a new cooling dish. Want to come downstairs and try it?" Robin had been at it for 5 or 6 hours and welcomed the break. "Sounds good." Downstairs, in the middle of a spread of small dishes, a shallow white plate held fizzy water and 2 wrinkled sour plums. "Plum soda?" he asked. "No." Nagini vanished into the kitchen and came out with a silver pot beaded with condensation. Instead of water, a cold white vapor poured out of its spout and sank into the plate. The water instantly froze into ice slush and kept piling up until a small mound formed, the sour plums perched on its peak. Nagini drizzled honey over it, split it in 2 with a fruit knife, and handed him half. The sweet, tart, refreshing taste was a joy, but what pleased Robin even more was the sight of water turning into a hill. Inspiration hit him. After the snack, he went back to the study, unrolled the map again, and began sliding his thumb and forefinger across the parchment. To his surprise, a ridge by the Coe River Valley in the Scottish Highlands matched the 3-clawed turtle on his sketch. He fetched the map he'd drawn that morning and put the 2 side by side. Both had thin, long tops. The claws' shapes differed slightly, but the number of serrations on the tips matched. There, in fine script on the mountainside, the map read Buachale Ediv Moor, Mount Beagle. After all that searching, the answer lay where he'd started. He remembered Kenzio's story. When he'd come to promote his inventory and dropped off a housewarming gift, he'd said he'd found the gray box in an ice crevice on Buachale Ediv Moor about 50 years ago. Mystery solved. Time to get ready. A week later, under cover of night, Robin crossed the wide Coe River Valley and arrived over a grassland scattered with boulders. He peered until he found an open patch about half the size of a basketball court, clear of rocks. He patted Norbert's hard dorsal spikes. The black dragon retracted his wing membranes and eased down into the clearing. Robin jumped off his back. Norbert thumped to the edge, sniffed at a giant rock, then turned and cocked his tail like a cat marking territory. He waddled away, eyes half closed with satisfaction, letting out a little bleating noise. The sound of a crisp plop came from beside the big stone. The bitter, pungent odor of Norwegian ridgeback urine drifted over. Robin rolled his eyes. After marking, now peeing everywhere. What a mess. Still, despite Norbert's mischiefs, he loved the little dragon fiercely. He took out his night vision binoculars and trained them on the distant peak. Mount Beagle wasn't a uniform expanse of snow as he'd imagined. The foothills were dense with shrubs, the mountainside held tall trees, and the summit was capped with pristine moonlit snow. Something tugged at his pants. Robin looked down to find Norbert, shrunken to about the size of a football, clambering up his shoe and tugging at the pant leg, craning his neck to peer around. At that size, there wasn't much to see, and Robin nudged him off. Norbert stumbled onto the grass, huffing indignantly. "What was that for?" "I was this close, just a little sniff, and I would have tracked the scent." "I thought you marked it," Robin said, brushing a dragon claw print off his shoe. "What scent?" Norbert bobbed his head toward the big rock. "There was a scent on it before I claimed it." "I smelled. A flashy person, likes to show off, a bit narcissistic, slightly neurotic, and the mark he left was a painting." "A painting?" Norbert burned a patch of grass into black ash with a small puff of flame, grabbed a twig, and scratched with his claw. "Done," he crowed, tossing the twig away. Robin looked at the blackened grass. The crude portrait showed a man with a long fringe parted 3 to 7, a pheasant tail feather tucked behind his ear, flat upper eyelids and crescent-shaped lower lids. His slanted eyes gave him a comical look. His pursed mouth was shaped as if blowing across a smoking gun barrel. A spirited young man with cowboy dreams, no question. And he'd done it with urine. Robin couldn't tell whether to laugh or be appalled. From the ring of rocks beyond the clearing came the thunder of pounding feet and roaring voices, growing louder. "Oh no," Norbert said, his little body trembling. "The guy from the portrait. I can smell him from a kilometer away." The dragon grabbed at Robin's pants, trying to climb. "You have wings. Why aren't you flying?" "I carried you for 7 days and 7 nights. My wings are tired," Norbert protested. 7 days and 7 nights? Nonsense, the dragon grumbled. "You rested during the day and took turns with Little White at night." Robin slid Norbert onto his shoulder, secretly kindling the faint weave of magic inside him, and watched the narrow gap at the edge of the clearing. The newcomer would most likely come through there. The thumps drew closer. The moonlight slanted across the grass and cast a long shadow that made the approaching figure look like a horned monster. Then the man burst through the gap, and Robin realized the shadow wasn't an illusion. The newcomer really did have 2 long, straight horns sprouting behind his ears. The shadowed figure stood nearly 5 meters tall and 3 meters long, supported on 4 heavy bovine hooves. Its whole body was covered in reddish-brown fur, and a curtain of long, shaggy hair fell over its eyes. A Highland cow, giant. Its head swung as it ran within a meter of them, but it didn't lower for a charge. It glanced at the man, noticed a cloth pouch tucked into his waistband, and showed open disdain. When Robin's pocket watch flashed from his chest, though, the creature's expression turned covetous. It didn't stop at Robin. The cow thundered straight to a boulder, nosed around with a twitching snout, then threw back its head and let out a mournful, angry bellow that rolled into the night. It planted itself between Robin and the little black dragon, and when it saw a crude drawing in the black ash on the rock, its pupils flared hot and smoke steamed from its nostrils. The little black dragon, clearly alarmed by the blazing grilled ox eyes, pointed a claw accusingly at Robin and made a sly he-did-it face before diving headfirst into Robin's open collar. Robin barely had time to act. He mouthed a quick incantation and slid Norbert into a shimmering magic cube. "I drew it," he said simply. When the Highland cow heard that, the fiery gleam in its eyes guttered out. It flicked its fringe, and with a smirk that made it look oddly proud, said, "Not bad." It captured 3 parts disdain, 3 parts mischief, and 4 parts spirit. "Can you draw me another? I'll trade you a treasure for it." It tapped its horns on the ground, 4 or 5 percussion taps, and a beam of yellow light shot from the tips. When the light faded, a small gray stone the size of a ping-pong ball lay on the earth, pitted with tiny holes. The cow nosed it toward Robin. "Bezoar," it said. Robin's eyes widened. Bezoars, rare detoxifying stones, could form inside sheep and cattle, like this one. 1 drawing for 1 bezoar was an excellent trade. He took out paper and pen and sketched a quick portrait, an attractive, melancholy cowboy emo. The cow inspected it, flicked its hair with satisfaction, and then, without ceremony, swallowed the paper. Robin half-stepped back. "What are you doing?" The cow smacked its lips. "I've 4 stomachs. One of them stores things. When I want them again, I knock them out with my horns." It coughed, cleared its throat, and added proudly, "Your drawing's not bad. It just barely meets my standard for friendship. Name's Eric." "Robin," he answered. As they talked, Robin learned Eric's family history as if it were gossip. Born on Mount Ben Nevis in the Coe River Valley, son of Austin, the valley's overlord. His mother, Yakana, famed for her beauty among the cows by Loch Lomond. A brother named Joyce, a hero who'd crossed the Grand Canyon. Eric complained about his own fief, tiny Mount Beagle, too small for a wanderer like him. He wanted to roam everywhere. "You here for treasure, then?" Eric asked, peeking through his fringe with a smirk. "Lots of folks came before you. None of them kept their wits." "How did they go mad?" "No idea," Eric shrugged. "Rules don't let me tell the treasure's exact spot, but beat me and I'll show you." Robin narrowed his eyes and appraised the cow's low, stocky strength. "Beat you how? Magic, or mano a mano?" "Neither." Eric shook his head and tossed his hair 3 times. "Marksmanship. Follow me." Robin agreed, and they left the rocky grove. They crossed a swath of grass and reached the foot of Mount Beagle. Vines covered the slope, trunks the thickness of wrists, thinner offshoots like fingers, and leaves as large as elephant ears. Eric rubbed his horns against the roots. The vines shivered, parting to reveal a narrow path, and beyond it, a cave mouth about 5 meters across. "Keep up." Inside was pitch black. Eric mooed 3 times, and as if on cue, countless tiny lights winked to life, turning the cave as bright as day. "Fire flame worms," he explained. 3 moos for light, 2 for dark. He pointed proudly at star-like points dotting the stone walls. The cave opened into a chamber of about 80 square meters. In the center sat a low stone platform, 20 centimeters high, mounded with dry grass. The ceiling was high and oppressive, a roosting place for a colony of bats hanging upside down. The walls were smoothly frosted stone, with only a few jagged spires near the top. "I smoothed these walls with my hooves," Eric bragged. "Even licked the dust off with my tongue. Ceiling's too high for me, though. I can't reach it." Eric nosed aside the dry grass on the platform and revealed a hoof-shaped indent. He stepped into it. The ceiling above creaked, and something heavy dropped from above into the grass. A black case clunked open to show 2 silenced revolvers and a thick stack of bullets. Eric's bovine tongue flicked over the barrels as he loaded them with his muzzle. 1 gun each, 3 bullets. Robin picked up the other revolver, loaded it, cocked the hammer, and asked the rules. "Whoever brings down the most bats." Eric mooed upward, and the bats stirred, swirling about in a chaotic cloud within a meter of the ceiling. He backed to the wall, legs half bent, tail flicking up dust, eyes fixed. 30 seconds later, he fired. The bullet punched through the bat layer, piercing one in the chest, ripping another's wing, and shattering a third skull in a single arc. The struck bat dropped. Where it hit the floor, it burst into a curling black mist that rose and reformed into a live bat, flying straight back up to the ceiling. A slender spent bullet lay where the mist had arisen. Eric sighed. Haven't practiced in a while. I only got 5. Robin steadied himself, squatted low, and picked out a tight cluster of 6 overlapping bats. He squeezed the trigger, but the shot missed, the bullet embedding in the cave stone with a dull thunk. From the wall came a teasing chuckle. Robin turned. Eric's eyes darted guiltily to the side. The brain circuit was strange, but we'd finally reached the treasure site. "Actually, your aim was fine. You just forgot the bats were moving," Eric said. "It's rare to miss every single one. Watch and learn. Dynamic aiming." He pawed the ground excitedly with his front hooves, hot air snorting from his nostrils, eyes darting up at the cave ceiling. He picked out an extra-large bat as his anchor point, ran 3 or 4 fast circles inside the cave, made a sharp turn, and fired. Bang! Bang! Several bats dropped to the cave floor. Eric crowed, spinning in a happy circle and playfully tugging at his tail. "See? A competition and a show-off all at once." He thrust the gun at Robin. "Your turn." Robin studied the bats clinging to the ceiling and thought of spearfishing, how refraction makes fish appear shallower than they are, so you aim below. To hit a moving bat, you had to set the aim where it would be, not where it was. He timed their speed, estimated their trajectory, picked the place where their paths would overlap vertically in the next 2 to 5 seconds, and squeezed the trigger. Bang! Bang! 5 more bats fell. Eric's jaw dropped. The silenced revolver slipped from his mouth with a wet slurp. He scrambled, snatched it up, and wiped the dirt off the muzzle with a hoof. He's a good prospect for gun training. The tribe's rule is that only if you beat me can I lead you to the treasure. But the cowboy spirit says respect your opponent, so for the last round, I'm definitely not going easy. Eric charged through the cave, hooves kicking up a cloud of dust that sent the bats into a frantic flutter. They bumped into one another and clipped wings in the haze. Through the dust, Robin saw Eric rear up on his hind legs on a stone platform and wave his front hooves. A streak left the muzzle of the gun, and 5 bats plunged toward the ground. When the dust settled, Eric tossed the revolver back into its box, flopped onto the hay, and preened. "After this, you can fly to Lake Roman and eat freshwater fish before dawn," Eric said proudly. "Forget the fish. I want beef noodles, the kind with really chewy meat." Eric's face changed from smug to stunned as he did a quick count. 3 shots for him had downed 16 bats. Robin's 2 shots had taken 5. 11 more. The bats were only flying within a vertical meter, 11 overlapping vertically seemed impossible. Then, Robin thought about horizontal overlap. He glanced at the jutting stalagmites on the cave ceiling, and an idea struck. He walked to a corner, uncoiled a spider silk rope with a grappling hook, spun it, and flung it upward until it snagged on a protruding stalagmite. Wrapping the silk tightly around his hand, he climbed, inching up until he reached the level of the bat swarm. He aimed the silenced revolver at a diagonal corner, calculated angle and speed, and fired. Bullets hissed through the air. 12 dark shapes fell. Robin gripped the rope and began to descend. Then the stalagmite above him cracked. The hook had pulled free and the stone broke. The stalagmite, the rope, and Robin all plunged down together. Thud. He expected a hard, rocky floor, but it felt soft and springy. "Oh, my back!" He hitched up, then realized he'd landed on a warm, hairy back. He flipped off and landed on the ground, facing a panting Highland cow. "Thanks," Robin said. "You won," Eric panted, astonished, clear snot almost dripping from his mouth. "My judgment wasn't wrong. I knew you had promise." Eric's expression shifted. Excitement gave way to a reluctant sadness. "After I lead you to the treasure, could you just look from a distance and leave? Everyone who went in before, they went mad." Robin shook his head. "People went mad, but that doesn't mean I will. There's something I need to do first." "What is it?" "You'll see." When he'd first landed on Eric's back, Robin had felt a sharp pain under his left collarbone. At first he thought it was from the fall, but now the spot was warm, an internal sign. He stared into Eric's big cow eyes and silently invoked the command, "Contain everything." In the next instant, Eric vanished, and Robin's consciousness slipped into the sea of consciousness. A giant Rubik's Cube hung in the ether. On the yellow face, in a square patterned with continuous mountains, a little cow totem raced and mooed. Robin reached out. The yellow square floated closer. He poked the cow totem and a translucent screen projected in front of him. Name, Eric species, Highland cow. Level, S rank. Personality, narcissistic, brave, freedom-loving, thinks differently. Physical condition, healthy. Skills, charge into battle. When running, stomping the ground kicks up dense dust that interferes with enemy vision. Bulletproof, 100% magic hit rate for 10 seconds. Scrape bone and remove poison. Can extract poison embedded deep in the marrow. Note, please take pain relief medication before activating. Magic power, 8,000. Combat power, 5,000. Robin winced at the note beside the poison skill. He waved his hand and returned the yellow square to its place. When his consciousness slid back into the cave, he released Eric. Eric snorted. "The Ko River Valley is endless, perfect for running wild. Teleport me back. I have a competition." "Who with?" Robin asked, glancing at the empty square in the sea of consciousness. No other cows appeared. "My dad said if I can outrun my shadow, I'll be the fastest cow in the valley," Eric declared. Robin rolled his eyes. "Outrunning your shadow sounds like a riddle. You probably misunderstood him." Eric paced, impatient. "I don't want to stay here. Send me back, and I'll give you 3 dung stones. You forgot, if I won, you promised to lead me to the treasure." Eric froze mid-pace, eyes darting guiltily. "I didn't forget. Cough. Follow me." They left the cave together. Vines rustled, and the cave mouth closed again under huge elephant ear leaves. They passed through low shrubs, cut into the mountainside forest, crossed several small streams, and came to a massive yellowish-brown boulder perched on the cliff edge. It was about the size of a shipping container, its surface honeycombed with small holes. A north-south crack split its middle, a hairline gap 2 centimeters wide, leading into a dark interior. Eric hopped onto the rock and pawed at the crack. 50 years ago, on a clear, cloudless afternoon, lightning struck and split this rock like that, he began. My dad said when the thunder hit, the whole Ko River Valley shook. Birds, rabbits, insects, even fish fled the valley as if their lives depended on it. 192. Magnificent mushroom forest, acid rain greeting gift. Since then, strange phenomena have happened every night at the megalith. Wave after wave of wizards come up to explore and hunt for treasure, and every single one of them goes mad and is carried back down the mountain. I heard none of them were ever cured. You're the 133rd to come on this expedition. It's not too late to turn back. What kind of strange phenomena? I'd already reached the foot of the mountain. Turning back now would be cowardice. Eric glanced at the stars, then at Robin's bright, determined eyes. A breeze blew his bangs into his face, and he didn't even brush them aside. I won't tell you. You'll see for yourself. In 10 minutes, the phenomenon will appear here. Are you sure you don't want to leave? I'm sure, Eric sighed. Then, if I go crazy, promise me you'll send me back to the mountains. A Western cowboy's spirit. Once the contest starts, don't stop it. I'll fight to the death with the shadow. One moment gloomy, the next foolish. His thought process was uniquely his own. Eric, like when I climbed to the top of that cave and shot to beat you, you have to change how you think to outrun the shadow. Robin muttered a short spell and sent Big Ox back into the grid space. Then he sat cross-legged on the megalith and waited. About 10 minutes later, thin white smoke began to pour from small fissures in the stone. Robin inhaled it and immediately felt dozens of tiny hairs rasping his throat. He bent over and coughed a dozen times before the itching eased. When he looked up, a flickering black shadow had crawled out of a crack. In breaths, it swelled into a 10-meter behemoth. It had no hands or feet, a triangular head crowned by a flat, fan-like neck, and an S-shaped body as thick as a water bucket. Its flicker made a ghostly, whispering hiss. Two massive tree trunks with exposed roots stood beside it. Whenever they thumped, the shadow's tremble grew louder and more furious. Robin pulled a damp cloth over his mouth and nose, stood, and moved slowly toward the shadow. Halfway there, a shrill, piercing scream came from high above that made his head spin and his vision swim. He fumbled at his waistband for a moment, found his magic cloth bag, and dug out a menthol spray. He sprayed it into his mouth and nose more than 10 times until the dizzying sensation subsided. When the world steadied, he discovered his surroundings had changed. The misty megalith had been replaced by a magnificent, bizarre expanse, the great mushroom forest. Mushrooms sprouted from dark, damp soil in riotous colors, blood red, gold, snow white, jade green. Some were as small as fingernails, others as big as 2-story houses. Many were the size of a single-story tiled cottage. Oddly, despite the damp and the abundance of fungi, there was not a trace of mildew in the air. A drop of rain fell on his hand. The spot smoked, blistered, and stung. Acid rain. Robin instinctively pulled his hand into his sleeve, covered his head with both hands, and dashed under a mushroom with a small stem and an enormous cap. He produced a jar of white moss salve from his supplies and began treating the burn while a mosquito-like chattering came from the mushroom's shaded underside. Robin shuffled closer to the stem to hear better. Humph, rains as soon as someone breaks in. How annoying. What kind of treasure brings people here in waves? A tiny voice complained. The rain'll only last a little while. Don't get so worked up. If the treasure's green malt syrup, what would you do? Another answered. A chorus erupted. Whoever got a spoonful of green malt syrup would give half their life for it. The noise simmered down and an old deep voice said, I hope that person finds Poolah soon. Poolah is the master of the mushroom forest. He knows where the treasure is and can drive people away. Poolah? Robin stepped around the stem and asked, Who is Poolah? Where can I find him? Silence fell like midnight. A dozen beady black eyes, some startled, some wary, some curious, fixed on him. Robin realized he wasn't looking at people at all, but insects the size of seagulls, segmented black legs, transparent wings, long straw-like proboscises, oversized mosquitoes. Their heads had 2 long antennae cloaked in brown fuzz like reeds. Hissing, that thick straw would suck a person dry in a few draws, he thought. Still, he hadn't come all this way for nothing. He rubbed his nose and asked again, how do I find Poolah? The swarm erupted into frantic chirps. They jostled, waved their proboscises, and flew out from under the cap in a cloud. Finally, one with lighter brown fuzz hovered and called back, Follow the sun, walk to the edge of the pond. Poolah's easy to spot, green body, white head. Then it swept away with the rest. The rain kept falling, but Robin brought out bread, canned meat, and fruit from his spirit bag, his sea of consciousness space, and ate to restore himself. 30 minutes later, the rain eased. A slant of golden sunlight slid to the edge of his mushroom cap, warm enough to tempt sleep. He forced himself up, stepped into the light, took a breath, and then squatted to sniff the ground. After the rain, there was no earthy scent. Strange, he thought. He straightened, adjusted his clothes, and set off toward the sun. Water still dripped from the sloping caps. Plop, plop. The drops landed with a steady, haunting rhythm, and Robin quietly memorized the pattern as if it might mean something. He walked so long his toes ached. Then, about 100 meters ahead, a cry rang out. "Help! Somebody! Please! Someone save me!" Remembering the giant mosquito swarm, Robin didn't rush in. He sidestepped 7 or 8 meters to the right, crept forward lightly for 80 or 90 more, and crouched behind a white-stemmed, yellow-capped mushroom to watch. To his front left, a red-spotted ladybug the size of an elephant thudded toward a small pond, mandibles clacking. By the water stood a tiny figure, hardly a meter tall, brandishing a wooden spear in terror. The little person had bright green skin and wore clusters of leaves around his ankles, wrists, and private parts. His face was an oval with round eyes and pupils no larger than mung beans. His hair was like nothing Robin had seen, thick white tufts like giant snowflakes attached to short wooden sticks standing up on his head. Around the edges of his white hair was a ring of dark brown willow leaf-shaped things. Pond, green body, white head. This had to be Pula. 193. The savior saw the green glutinous rice paste. "Help! Someone! Anyone, please!" The cry pierced the air. A ladybug heard it, shook its antennae impatiently, then beat its wings and charged toward the pond. The little man dodged a few steps to the right and, with a quick backhand, jabbed a wooden spear into the insect's wing. Enraged, the ladybug lunged diagonally and pinned the man to the ground. As its black claws flailed, they ripped a gash in his thigh. Instantly, the earth beneath him stained green with a strange bluish blood. Robin saw the ladybug's mandibles mere 2 centimeters from the man's neck. He activated his poison mist condenser and fired a poison needle straight at the fragile joint between the ladybug's neck and chest. Whoosh, whoosh, the needle hit. The insect's antennae flailed like a broken car wiper, and a moment later, it collapsed on top of the man with a dull thud, going still. "So heavy, I'm gonna die!" "Someone, please," the man cried, struggling to push the ladybug off. Robin strode to the water's edge, used his mountain-pulling, cauldron-lifting strength, and flipped the insect onto its back, all 6 legs stiff in the air. The man scrambled up and, seeing who had saved him, stared in disbelief. "You're human?" Robin's dark eyes lingered on the man's white hair. "Yes. I'm here looking for treasure." "Benefactor, my name is Pula. Let me dress my wound first, then we can talk." Pula scooped up a handful of pond water, gulped it down, then dove in. He scrubbed the black mud from his body and climbed ashore. The wound on his thigh, with no ointment or healing magic, had already vanished. Robin's gaze stayed fixed on Pula's hair. "What is it?" Pula asked, touching his neck with an odd look. "Pula, why is that strand at the tip of your right ear drooping? It's much finer than the others." "Oh, it's newly grown. They're all like that at first." "When will it match the others?" "Very soon, benefactor." Pula beamed. The word benefactor made Robin's skin prickle. "Just call me Robin, Pula. Do you know where the treasure is?" "Benefactor Robin, I do. Since you saved my life, I should tell you everything I know," Pula began. Then he hesitated. "But the rules are, if you want the treasure, you have to trade green malt syrup." "Is green malt syrup the local currency?" Robin asked, but Pula answered first. He pointed toward a distant mushroom with a yellow stem and a red cap. "Walk 2 kilometers that way. You'll find a super large Luvii mushroom. The liquid that drips from its cap is the green malt syrup." From a squat, sturdy mushroom house, he produced a shallow basin, 70 centimeters across. "Use this to collect it. There are 3 giant mantises guarding the Luvii mushroom. Be careful." "Are they as big as that ladybug?" Robin asked. "Oh, much bigger." "All right, I'll be careful." Robin took the basin and started toward the mushroom. He had only gone 7 or 8 meters when Pula jogged up. "I'm coming too. I'll help." "Aren't you breaking the rules?" Robin said. "The rules don't say I can't help adventurers," Pula replied, eyes bright. "Pula repays kindness. You saved me. If I don't do something, my heart feels like it's being pricked by needles." He grabbed Robin's arm on the verge of tears. "Please, let me go with you." "Fine, but promise me one thing." "Anything." Pula grinned. "Don't call me benefactor anymore." Robin agreed and strode ahead. Pula hesitated a moment, then hurried to catch up. 20 minutes later, they were crouched on either side of a mushroom with a white stem and blue cap, peering at 3 enormous mantises not far away. The mantises were emerald green, some 6 meters tall and 10 meters long. Their heads were crowned with a saddle-like carapace. Their compound eyes were half transparent, half golden brown. Their scythe-shaped forelegs, 3 meters long, flashed coldly in the warm sunlight. A thick, dark gray bean beetle the size of a water vat crawled into their territory. The mantises remained motionless until the beetle passed beneath a head. Then a foreleg swept down and cleaved it in two. Gray-brown pulp splattered everywhere. The mantis hunched down, worked its mandibles, and greedily sucked the flesh. In minutes, only 2 shriveled skins remained. Ants the size of shoes swarmed them and dragged them away, and they licked the spilled pulp from the ground until nothing was left. Full, the mantis spread its wings and hung upside down from the underside of a mushroom cap, its eyes rolling black as it fell asleep. "Is that the lovey mushroom?" Robin whispered, nodding at the giant fungus under whose cap the mantises slept. "Yes," Pula breathed. It was larger than any mushroom they'd seen, easily 3 stories high, translucent and watery green like jade. The cap shimmered and was thickly glazed with a transparent, viscous syrup that flowed in slow rivulets and dripped pat-pat onto the earth, where the soil swallowed it up. The rhythm of the dripping reminded Robin of raindrops. It strengthened his suspicion that the mushrooms might be thinking, communicating outward in some way. Pula rubbed his belly and licked his lips. It smells so good. I want to slurp some." Robin, who had eaten while hiding from the rain earlier, hadn't detected any extraordinary aroma, but he said nothing. "The mantises are asleep. I'll go collect the green malt syrup. You stay here." "Okay, be careful." Pula's eyes were full of worry. Robin wanted to touch the white hair at Pula's ear, but the boy darted away. "Benefactor, remember, a boy's hair shouldn't be touched casually, but since you're Pula's benefactor, you may touch it after you've collected a basin of green malt syrup." Pula's grin flashed his teeth. Robin smiled back. "All right." He moved toward the Leviae cap with light steps, keeping his weight low. 7 or 8 meters in, his foot slipped on slick moss. He lunged forward, planted his left foot, and used a front flip, catching himself with practiced balance so his feet landed smoothly. The mantises still slept with their eyes black. He exhaled and kept going. A few minutes later, he reached the edge beneath the cap where the syrup ran fastest. He set the mushroom basin in a place where the viscous green liquid pooled and overflowed the slightly upturned rim, then waited. When enough syrup gathered, it would spill and drip down, perfect for filling his makeshift vessel. "If you want to cut me in half, you won't be able to do it in this life or the next." Robin watched a drop of sap swell from ping-pong size to an apple, detach from the cap, and fall. He clenched his fists, nerves and adrenaline coiling together. Splat! Before the sap could hit the basin, a crisp sound came from behind him. He turned to meet Pula's wide, guilty eyes. With a sigh, Robin looked up at the mushroom cap. 3 pairs of translucent, half-golden brown eyes glared down like knives. Whoosh! A mantis leapt down, its jagged scythes aimed straight for Robin's waist. Robin's face contorted. "You want to cut me in half? Not in this life, not in the next." He grabbed the mushroom basin and hurled it up, then turned and ran, only to find the other 2 mantises already on the ground, blocking his path. He threw a spell and conjured a wall of fire. The flames slammed into the 4 scythes and bounced back. Robin didn't want a Lockhart-style reversal, so he extinguished the wall and flicked his fingers to fire 30 poisoned needles. This time, the needles didn't rebound. They pierced the fragile joints and sank into the mantises' limbs. The 2 didn't collapse like the ladybugs had. Instead, their eyes flared with renewed vigor. A phantom glimmer suddenly traced a sneak strike across the smooth, lethal scythe of the mantis in front of him. Instinct pushed Robin forward in several long bounds. Chua! He saw a scythe driven a meter into the ground. The mushroom basin lay split in 2 beside it. Boom! The mantis withdrew its scythe. The splash of black mud made Robin reflexively close his eyes, but a cold wind struck his brow and he sidestepped. He opened his eyes to see only the mantis's abdomens and hind legs. His heart dropped as they reared up, scythes raised to cleave him into pieces. As the blades fell, Robin used his serpentine movement. A wavy afterimage skirted the mantis's hind legs and abdomens and shot outward. The afterimage hit the edge of the mushroom's ward and bounced back, landing everyone on their backs. Robin pushed himself up and glanced at Pula, incredulous. You didn't tell me there was a magic shield around the Livy mushroom? Pula slapped his forehead with an apologetic keening. Benefactor, I'm sorry. I forgot to say, 30 meters outside the Livy is a magic circle. Anything that enters it, except army ants, will either be killed by the guardian mantises, be trapped forever, or be eaten. Woo-woo, Pula's voice trembled. I really didn't mean to. Kill the guardian mantises? Robin looked up at the 6-meter-tall insects and silently calculated his odds in a 1 versus 3. Pula, trying to fix the situation, produced a translucent red stone from somewhere. Benefactor, don't worry. The divine hero stone can cut through anything. I'll cut an opening in the magic circle and you can get out. Pula, be brave, he muttered at himself, clutching the divine hero stone in one hand and a wooden spear in the other. He charged, yelling, "Yee-ya, yee-ya!" But his foot slipped as he reached Robin. Arms flailing, he tumbled into the magic circle with a terrified scream. Robin grabbed his shoulder before his forehead met a sharp stone. My stone? Pula gaped at his empty palm. Outside the ward, on a patch of moss, the pomegranate-like divine hero stone sat where it had fallen. I messed up again. Pula's shoulders sagged. Take this wooden spear for now, Pula offered, trembling. Don't underestimate it. The magic patterns on its tip let it pierce hard things. Robin eyed the spear. Cloud patterns were scrawled on the tip in red ink, badly drawn, with a conspicuous ink blot at the end. Amateur work, he thought. Pula's eyes filled with sorrow. Benefactor, you keep it. A huge shadow swept over them. Whooshing sounds came from above. Robin and Pula scrambled apart. Chua, a giant scythe, crashed down where the two had been standing seconds earlier. Boom! Mud flew when the blade came free. This time Robin didn't squeeze his eyes shut. He peered through his fingers to check on Pula. A mantis had targeted Pula, raining scythes down around him. The little man hugged his head, shrieking, "Yee-ya, yee-ya!" and narrowly escaped, arching his body as he fell so his legs weren't severed. One scythe had lodged a meter into the ground, snagged on a hard stone, and stuck fast. Seeing an opening, Robin activated Flying Dragon in the sky, beating invisible wings and launching himself onto the stuck mantis's back. He barely had time to move before another mantis straightened nearby, raising 2 scythes high and swinging them toward him. Robin flapped and fled. Thud. A jade-green seat, the detached mantis head, thudded away. The stuck mantis, having accidentally severed its companion's head, clamped the corpse's thorax with its scythes and began tearing it open. The other mantis joined, slicing into the abdomen and sucking greedily at the greenish-blue viscous juice. Benefactor. Pula's voice wobbled as he gripped the wooden spear and stared upward. Robin circled the lovey mushroom. Each drop of sap the soil absorbed seemed to thicken the magic shield. If he felled the mushroom, would the ward fall too? The thought crossed his mind, but his instincts pushed it away. Too risky. His gaze snagged on a detached scythe handle lying where the corpse had been eaten clean. While the mantises fussed with the scythe tips, he dropped, seized the handle, and, calling on his giant club strike, slammed it against one mantis's thorax. Crack! The scythe's shell shattered, and the mantis collapsed into a heap. But its blade had clipped back, and Robin's back slammed into the magic shield. He slid down, doubled over in pain. Pula rushed forward, shaking. Benefactor, are you all right? Robin forced himself up against the pain, shook his head to say he was fine, then felt an itchy sweetness in his throat. He swallowed and coughed up a mouthful of blood. The pain in his chest eased after he spat it out. He wiped the blood from his lip and found Pula staring, tears in his eyes. Pula sobbed, Benefactor, it's my fault, all my fault. Without magic support, mantis claws are no different from rotten wood. If I'd warned you sooner, you wouldn't be hurt. Don't blame yourself. I don't blame you. Be careful. I'm going to deal with that mantis that knocked me away. With that, Robin beat his wings and flew onto the mantis's back. He swayed with the insect's jerky movements, flailing his arms and shouting to provoke it. When the mantis, furious, raised its scythes and swung, Robin darted backward at the last moment. Swish, thud. Another emerald-green seat appeared on the ground. The other mantis, still breathing on the field, hadn't eaten its companion's corpse. Either sated or enraged, it stood upright and began to swing its 2 huge scythes wildly. There was no slow raise and strike. Its blades moved so fast they left streaks in the air. After dodging dozens of furious swings, Robin dove down and ran. Swish! Each time the scythe drove into the earth, it threw up clumps of mud. The mantis repeated the cycle: raise, strike, plant, pull out, and chased him relentlessly. In the air, its scythes blurred. On the ground, there was a hulking obstacle: the dead mantis. Every lap, Robin had to sprint up it, jump, and stride over that hill-like corpse. He tried to make light of his misery. If this were a hurdle race, I'd be champion, he thought wryly. By the 17th time, his side seized. A stitch stabbed his left abdomen, like some frantic backhoe digging into his flesh. He couldn't stand up straight. Sweat streamed from his forehead. Whoosh, whoosh! Robin glanced back. 3 meters away, the living mantis stood upright with its spiky scythes raised. As he searched for an opening, a shout came from behind the corpse hill. Black ball. The black ball on its abdomen is the mantis's weakness. Robin looked up and saw, at the junction of the abdomen and thorax, a grapefruit-sized black orb pulsing, feeding blood and magic through a dark tube into the abdomen. Then a shadow fell over him. Pula hovered above, clutching a wooden spear. He'd mustered the nerve to climb over the corpse to help. Benefactor, catch the wooden spear. Pierce the black ball. Once the mantis is dead, collect the green malt syrup and you'll get the treasure. All right. Robin gritted his teeth against the pain and leapt. He planted both feet in Pula's back and shoved, kicking him hard. Pula flew toward the mantis's black ball. The spear's tip glowed with an eerie red light. The light winked out, and the spearhead was already lodged in the black sphere. Pfft! Black ichor gushed out, splattering the little green creature and turning it black. When Pula tumbled down and got to his feet, he didn't look at the twitching, useless trophy. He glared at Robin with furious eyes. What did you do? It was going to die anyway, Robin said. Whose hands it dies in? What does it matter? Pula's anger flared. How can it be the same? Robin yawned lazily. It really isn't the same. If you had killed the mantis, I don't know what would have happened. But if I killed it, my soul would be trapped here, turned into a white hair above your right ear. No sooner had he finished than the limp little white hair on Pula's right ear turned to mist and vanished. Pula clapped a hand to his ear, surprised. When did you suspect me? Oh, early on. Robin's voice was casual, almost bored. When I first came in, there was an acid rain. After it stopped, raindrops fell from the umbrella cover in a rhythm. Long, short, long, short, short. It took me a while to recognize it as Morse for kill. At first, I thought it was a reminder to kill you. But when you led me to the Levi mushroom, I realized kill meant the mantis. Pula bellowed. Then why didn't you kill it? What were you waiting for? I'm not done, Robin continued. The dripping of the green malt syrup sounded very like that rain, but with an added prefix of 4 longs and 1 short. Kill became do not kill. I also suspected you at the pool, the so-called #1 expert pinned in the mouth of a flying mosquito and forced into a corner by a 7-spotted ladybug. The number of white hairs you had just happened to equal the number of treasure hunters here. At the white-stemmed, blue umbrella mushroom, you grabbed my arm and shouted, "So fragrant." That fragrant was referring to me, wasn't it? The god-hero stone you praised to the heavens is nothing but a piece of red carnelian. It can't cut through a magic shield, or even a wooden board. You let yourself fall into the magic circle, so I would retrieve the weapon that can kill the mantis, the wooden spear. When the mantis chased you, you ran screaming and somehow always managed to dodge its scythes. And you were obsessed with that mouthful of blood I spat out. You almost licked it off the ground. Pula went pale. He hadn't expected so many things to be exposed. Why wasn't this person like the others? Those who, at the brink of death, grabbed the spear and drove it into the guardian mantis themselves. If you saw through it, why did you pick up the mantis's forelimb and try to cut the other mantis's chest? He demanded. If I hadn't acted convincingly, how could I have made you show your fear? Robin lifted an eyebrow, a sly smile playing on his lips. You set a trap. You should expect to be trapped in return. Pula's face twisted. With a roar, he stomped, launching himself 2 meters into the air. The spear pointed straight at Robin's neck. Mid-charge, time seemed to hiccup. Pula froze. White hairs like tiny wooden splinters peeled off his head and hung suspended in the air. His skin paled, then grayed. With sickening cracking sounds, his body broke apart into countless stone fragments that clattered to the earth. Like the green malt syrup, they sank into the black soil and vanished. The tiny white hairs stopped spinning and gathered into a thick halo. The halo stretched and formed something like limbs. In the warm sunlight, it thinned, and where the hairs had been now hovered 132 translucent figures. Wizards, eyes closed, arms at their sides. Old men with white hair, strapping youths, beautiful witches, soft-faced children. They were pale and faint as breath. A vortex formed in the chests of those souls. It spun and sucked out the pale life essence from their translucent bodies. As they grew dusty gray, the vortex condensed into a wisp of white air and drifted straight into Robin. A warm rush filled him, sudden strength and clarity. Fighting that mantis for another dozen hours would have been child's play. When Robin absorbed the last of it, all 132 souls opened their eyes. They smiled faintly, waved, and then dissolved into light. Xiao Xiao, gone. The Levia mushroom rocked and loosened a flood of green malt syrup. Instead of dripping down, the syrup hung before Robin and formed a line of text. Adventurer, congratulations on solving the puzzle and gaining the opportunity to seek the treasure vault. The souls of your predecessors will be eternally sealed here. A hint, the location of the treasure vault is water. Robin blinked and stared at the syrup letters. So this stage was just a treasure-hunting threshold, he thought, utterly flat. 196. Oops, I turned into a paper man. The words shimmered and merged into a sheet of water. As Robin tried to guess where the lock might be, the water gate slammed shut and drenched him. He wiped his face and found himself back on the boulder. In the stone crack, a 10-centimeter cobra-like gray mushroom had sprouted, and a small bird with red claws was perched at its rim, pecking at the mushroom cap every time it flexed its claws. Aha! Case closed. The immense black silhouette, tens of meters high in the white mist, and the giant trunk of the main tree had been nothing but enlarged illusions of these two tiny things. Robin felt something sticky on his palm. When he lifted his hand, he saw a miniature Levia mushroom stuck there, its cap constantly secreting a viscous fluid. The totem under his left collarbone throbbed faintly and warmed. A bonus item was better than nothing. He silently intoned a storing spell and slipped the mushroom into the magic cube. At the same time, his consciousness dove into his sea of consciousness. Inside the cube, on the green face, a giant mushroom forest under a light rain filled the view. The Levia mushroom towered 3 stories, its cap dripping with syrupy fluid, pat, pat, pat. With a thought, the cube floated back to him. In the lower left corner of the cube floated an emerald green mushroom totem. He clicked it and read the light screen projection carefully. Name none. Species, Levia mushroom grade, SS. Personality, benevolent, generous, gentle. Physical state, healthy. Skills, myriad candied syrups. The fluid secreted by the mushroom cap is edible and can also mesmerize insects and make them do its bidding. Soul Guardian, protects one's soul from harm for 3 minutes. Spore Blast, shoots spores that auto-detonate with a power equivalent to a firework spark. Note, seasonings can be added before detonation. Magic Power, 8,000. Combat Power, 3,000. Spore Blast, fine for 1 versus many, but the damage was pretty small. After naming the Levia mushroom Little Candied, Robin waved and returned the white cube to its place, then drew his consciousness out of the sea of consciousness back into the real world. A white vine shot up from the crack in the boulder, wrapped around his ankle, and yanked him downward. The crack was barely 2 centimeters wide, certainly not wide enough for his whole body, let alone his big toe. But the moment the vine touched him, his body flattened like paper. Inside, it was pitch black. The further down he went, the wider the passage became, and his body slowly reinflated like a balloon being filled. Once he'd returned to full shape, the vine released him, and a blinding white light flashed below. With a thud, he fell onto solid ground. The place burned bright and hard, so luminous it hurt his eyes. Robin shaded them and looked around. This was a barren plain, no mountains, rivers, or vegetation, just a blistering sun over pale, powdery soil. He scooped up a handful of the white earth, clenched it tight, counted to 10, and opened his fist. The soil fell back loosely. His palm was bone dry. Robin stared, wide-eyed. The treasure node had been water. Did that mean he had to be a well digger? How was he supposed to find underground water? Not exactly his specialty. Irritated, he kicked at the soil. His toe struck something hard. Embedded in the toe of his boot was a fragment of a colorful seashell. He pried it out and examined the concentric iridescent rings. Had some tide brought this here, or had this been a sea once? He scraped the soil with his foot a few times and found more shell fragments and a whole shell lying with its colorful side down. He couldn't pry that one loose. A little farther, he found another colorful side-down shell that also refused to budge. Strange usually meant clue to Robin. He didn't believe there were only 2 shells in this empty place. He pulled out a Kenzio brand iron broom and swept the white sand within a meter of the shells. Beneath the dust, he uncovered a dozen complete shells. Laid end to end, they formed a smooth inward arc. He swept along that curve. 10 minutes later, he had revealed a retro compass made of shells. Its center, like the compass on the second treasure map, bore an octagonal pattern. One thing was missing, a magnetic needle. Robin decided to make one. He took a pocket watch, removed the case, and plucked out the second hand. He rubbed it vigorously in his palm, then supported it on a piece of soft paper and set it on the surface of water in a wooden basin. Surface tension held it afloat. He gently slid the paper away. The second hand swung 60 degrees to the right, oscillated a few times, and settled, aligning true north and south. Then, without warning, the second hand launched into the air and began to spin. The white soil around the shell compass lifted and eddied, swept up into a rising dust column that spun faster and faster. The whirlwind drilled into the ground like a living auger, spraying shallow white loam, mid-layer yellow clods, and deep black slurry in all directions. 30 minutes later, the tornado vanished, leaving a circular mound of earth 4 or 5 meters high and a pit that looked bottomless. Robin brushed dust from his clothes and climbed the mound to the opening. The pit was about 2 meters across and black inside, but he could hear something scrabbling upward from the depths. He climbed higher, squinted, and stared into the mouth. With a whoosh, the thing burst out. It twisted and flailed, flattening the top of the mound. Robin stumbled back 20 meters to watch the writhing behemoth. It was like Devil's Snare, and the Whomping Willow rolled into one. Its trunk, branches, and offshoots were all white vines of varying thickness, spiraling and coiling together, but massively more destructive. The main trunk was roughly 5 meters across and shot up 10 meters high. Each of its 4 principal branches was as thick as a water vat. The secondary branches were the size of buckets, and even the tendrils were as thick as human fingers. White, porous tumors the size of soccer balls dotted the branches. Milky liquid seeped from their pores. Where the drops hit the ground, they hissed and smoked. Each time a main branch slammed down, it compacted about 1/15 of the mound. When the mound was flattened, a branch would lie close to the earth and its secondary branches and tendrils would spiral outward and explode toward him. Robin flicked his wrist and released 10 balls of blue flame. The vines reacted instantly. Countless hair-thin tendrils sprouted, wrapped around the flames, and retracted back into the main vines. After 10 seconds, both the extra tendrils and the flames winked out, but the vines themselves had begun growing and extending far faster than before. 197. Big stupid fox, stop your rolling eyes fire, met the praying mantis and was repelled. Fire met the vines and fed them. This place was truly strange. Robin twirled his fingers and sent out dozens of viper venom needles. The needles flew far faster than the flames. The tendrils had barely grown 2 centimeters when the needles struck the vine with a series of sharp snaps. The vines, like hemp ropes, went limp and slumped to the ground. 10 seconds later, they suddenly straightened, shot up into the air, and began spiraling forward, growing wildly. The viper venom had only paralyzed them for 10 seconds. The vines, maddened by being felled, resolved to tear apart the tiny human who had dared to attack. The other 3 branches leaned over, nodes and tendrils burst forth and lunged toward him. Robin backed up 20 meters, eyes on the white mottled mass and the sizzling smoke at its base. Fighting alone, his odds were slim. He muttered a spell and released his summons. The 3-tailed fox, unicorn jasmine, soul ripper derivative little ash, Cornwall pixie lying board, and the acromantula mora. Mora, the size of a small elephant, landed with a clatter and then cowered behind Robin, whimpering. "Wah, what a terrifying big tree! Master, Mora is scared. Send Mora back!" The pixie bared his teeth and grinned, excited, while Jasmine pawed the white soil and flicked her tail, horn glowing faintly. You licked a paw and smirked. Oh, a mere sapling dragged me out of my big bed? How rude. Don't underestimate it, Robin warned. The liquid from those tumors is corrosive. Don't let it eat your fur. I don't believe you, Ya said. A droplet of milky sap struck the tip of Ya's tail. Sizzle, fur melted and vanished into white smoke. Enraged, Ya leapt up, claws bared, and severed the attacking vine. The severed vine turned to white smoke and dissolved, but the cut surface on the main vine oozed thick sap and kept growing. Ya's claw had melted away by a third. No way, my paw's ruined, she cried. Jasmine trotted over, aimed her horn, and sent a beam of silver light. The claw reformed, whole again. If you don't behave, you really might end up hairless, she scolded. Ya hugged her restored tail and rolled her eyes at Robin's dry expression. Mora, spin webs on the outer field. Lying board, grab the silk and wrap it around the vines. Little Ash, fly to the trunk, cling on and try to suck out souls. Jasmine, patrol the perimeter, heal anyone who gets hurt. Ya, stop rolling your eyes and help me cut the vines, Robin finished. All right, Ya said, full battle intent. She padded to his side and assumed an attack stance. Robin drew his Kenzio longsword. Mora's spinnerets pumped, spider silk spraying. Beside them, a pair of small steely blue hands worked the threads. Jasmine stamped the soil and flared her horn. Little Ash trembled, ready. Attack, Robin commanded. He sidestepped a lash of vine and swung his longsword, cleaving it off. The severed section turned to white smoke. The cut wept white sap, some of which splashed onto his blade. The sap hissed against the metal, but did not corrode it. Watch out, Robin warned. Ya lunged 3 meters, slashed with her hook, and cut another thick vine cleanly. Her hook was unscathed, unsmelled. You didn't expect me to use the magic blade, did you? She boasted. The magical blade of energy she produced with her claw kept the sap from eating her weapon. They made steady progress, Robin cutting, Ya chopping. But their allies struggled. Little Ash darted to the trunk and tried to siphon, expanding and contracting, but couldn't draw a single wisp of soul. Mora sprayed silk that dissolved in the corrosive sap. Lying board tangled silk across the vines, but the threads charred and broke. Jasmine, busy healing the pixie, was herself splattered with sap. Her horn could heal others, not herself. An hour of grueling work left Robin trembling from exhaustion. Mora and the others were barely standing. Ya held up her paw, pocked with holes. It's not whole again. This sapling is wicked. We've been fighting forever, and there are still so many branches. Robin acted. He grabbed Ya's tail, threw her back to buy himself space, and with a powerful swing, severed a nodal branch thick with a white tumor. The white tumor split in two. One half vanished with the severed branch, the other half spilled bright sap. Down, Robin barked. Ya obeyed. She slammed the severed stump into the ground with a heavy paw. The sap that had been hissing into smoke this whole time didn't vaporize. It hardened into a black scab, and the fracture stopped spiraling and growing. Whatever had been restraining the vines, the white soil, or the shell fragments in it was tied to the earth itself. Robin needed to know which. He scooped up a handful of white earth, shook it once, twice, a dozen times. Shell fragments rattled down. Sword in his right hand, he cut a thin vine, and with his left, scattered shell shards onto the fresh cut. Sizzle, the sap sealed into another black scab, and that branch stopped regenerating. Every monster has a counter. The thing restraining the vines was literally in their feet. You can switch to a different tool, Robin said aloud, a wire mesh fishing net. Ya's eyes flashed. She'd been seething at the vines for a while. An iron fishing net? Of course, Robin remembered an item tucked in his Sea of Consciousness inventory. Earlier, before Filch was petrified, he'd received a silly report of someone making a homemade iron net to scoop baby octopuses out of the Black Lake. He'd rushed over, found only Fred and George horsing around and himself and Hermione reading under a tree. Still, the net, along with an aluminum bucket and small stove, had been added to his inventory. He stowed his longsword, produced the iron net, scooped up netfuls of white soil, and shook them until hundreds of shell fragments clinked free. Then he activated his precise throw skill. Wherever Ya's claw cut, he scattered the fragments. When a severed cross-section touched the shells, it formed a black scab and stopped regenerating. Little Ash, suck the severed branches. Mora, lying board, Wrap shell fragments in silk and bind the vines. Jasmine, roll in the dirt a few times, Robin ordered. Little Ash had been trying for an hour with nothing to show. Now he flew to a severed branch and, after only a few sucks, drew up sweet, refreshing white soul power. Mora twisted her abdomen and spun silk into a thick rope. Lying Board clutched one end, swung it in wide arcs, and flung the rope into the dirt to pick up fragments. When the rope was heavy with shells, he yanked it tight and flew toward the pile of vines, intent on binding them tight. They finally had a plan that worked. 198. Dried termites, spicy. Molly didn't roll on the ground. Instead, she kicked the surrounding dirt away with her hooves, then sank gracefully into a half-crouch and waited for the white dust and fragments to fall on her. When the shards touched her wounds, they sizzled and formed scabs. Not fully healed, but the pain eased. The fight shifted quickly. Under the pincer attack of one person and 5 pets, the vine monster had no strength left to resist. 30 minutes later, its 4 limbs had been severed by sharp claws, leaving only a bare trunk ringed with 4 black, crusted wounds. Whoosh, whoosh. The monster, realizing it could no longer win, crawled back into the cave. Robin hesitated a second, then jumped after it. Mora and the others followed. Thud, the landing. Peering in from the cave mouth, it seemed pitch black inside, yet the floor glowed faintly. The hardened walls were studded with fingernail-sized stones that gave off a red light. Using that glow, Robin surveyed the chamber, about 20 square meters, and in the very center sat a marble altar 2 meters across. 4 thick vines, each as thick as a water jar, were wound tightly around the stone. They wrapped around the altar for 4 meters, then shot upward, branching and weaving into a broad net. Above that, the vines twisted together again and continued upward. In the heart of the vine net floated an oval, rugby ball-sized white pearl, haloed in milky light. Robin handed the iron fishing net to Lying Board and called Kenzio's longsword, planning to cut the vine web. Suddenly, a thumb-thick vine twitched and opened. The white pearl shot out and slammed into Robin's shoulder. Clang. Robin and his longsword hit the ground. The magic wand in his arms flew free. He scrambled up, grabbed the longsword, then reached for the wand, prioritizing the wand. It rolled stubbornly half a meter away, then lifted into the air and streaked after the pearl. When the pearl met the ebony wand, it quivered like a mouse confronted by a cat, darting in panic. After circling the cave more than a dozen times, it seemed the space was too small to shake off the wand's pursuit. It spun near the vines, trying to make for the cave mouth. Ya whipped her foxtail, leaped 2 meters, and slapped the pearl with a claw. Robin seized the floating wand and thrust it into the oncoming pearl. Crack, the pearl shattered. Milky white liquid seeped out and, as if drawn by the wand, flowed slowly into its shaft. When the liquid was absorbed, a dark brown tendril pattern crept along the handle. The design was faint from a distance, but the wand trembled violently in Robin's hand. He could feel it draw close, alive with a vast magic that wanted desperately to burst out. He wanted to test it, to cast a spell and see the change, but the Underage Wizards Restriction Act was in effect, and he didn't need a warning from the ministry. Gently he stroked the wand. When it calmed, he stored it in his sea of consciousness. The vines around the altar turned to white smoke and dissipated. Where they had been, a dark pool entrance, 5 meters across, was revealed. A dark pool, no more searching for an underground water source. Ya bounced in front of him, fox ears swiveling back, a sly grin on her face. I helped, she said. I want 20 or 30 roasted chickens, honey-roasted, crispy skin. All right, Robin said readily. Ye's grin deepened. She knew she might have asked too little. Robin ruffled her fur and nuzzled at the folds of her neck. Don't be greedy, or you'll end up like Dapang. Dapang, big fatty, was a snowy owl, round as a ball and surprisingly nimble. Ye tossed her head and turned away with a huff, already scheming mischief. What do you want? She asked the others. The unicorn shook its head. Dried termites, 5 catties, spicy. Mora's 8 eager eyes fixed on Robin. Hangers, Lying Board added with a grin. 100 of them, iron ones. Little Gray thumped into Robin's arms and settled, belly rising and falling sleepily. He'd clearly eaten too much. When this hunt's over, I'll go to Diagon Alley, or the village, and buy the roasted chickens, the hangers, and the dried termites, Robin promised. He murmured a short spell and returned Mora and the others to the magic cube. Then he withdrew a small black vial from his sea of consciousness, a gillyweed compound potion. He took off his shoes, drank the liquid in one long gulp, and immediately felt an unbearable itch beneath his ears, like hundreds of feathers stroking his skin. The urge to draw a dagger and tear at the flesh was strong, but he knew he couldn't. Plop. He jumped into the dark pool. The icy water numbed the itching momentarily, then a sharp, burning pain lanced under his ears. He pressed both hands to the spots and felt two narrow slits on each side, opening and closing, gills. He raised his hands and found webs 3 to 5 centimeters long, stretching between his fingers. Sitting back on the altar, he lifted his feet. They had lengthened and widened, webs between the toes. He stowed his shoes and dove back in. Now the water was no longer freezing, but cool and pleasantly comfortable. His body felt as light as a fish. He swallowed pool water once. It flowed out through the gills, delivering oxygen smoothly into his bloodstream. Robin flipped and propelled himself toward the pool's depths. The dark water blurred vision like looking through frosted glass. He could see clearly only within a 2-meter radius. He wasn't swimming blind, though. Earlier, he'd spotted a glowing red dot below and to his right, about fist-sized. He steered toward it, his webbed hands and feet working in perfect rhythm until he arrived. The red dot was a hemispherical magical shield, 3 meters across. Inside the shield, a column of orange-yellow liquid and white steam poured out, a living volcano. If he tried to dive in, he'd be incinerated and not even be able to recover any bone fragments. He opened his mouth to curse, but the potion's effects meant his speech turned into a large bubble. The bubble bumped the magic shield, and with a strange bow, the shield exploded. The bubble somehow remained intact. That should have been impossible. Panic flared in him. This was bad. The volcano trembled. White smoke shot 6 meters upward, and molten orange lava gushed from the vent. Robin spun and swam forward at full speed. He covered 300 or 400 meters while a deafening roar built behind him. Then a wall of scalding water slammed past, carrying him 1,000 meters away. He was only alive because he flipped on his indestructible skill the moment he turned. Otherwise, his insides would have been cooked. Once he slowed through boiling, bubble-choked water, he made out 2 stone doors about 10 meters ahead, and they were slamming shut. 199, moon jellyfish. It has no brain. He glanced back. Surging magma was spreading toward them in a fierce wave. Although the silverfish spirit insect had evolved 4 times, the indestructible effect had only been extended from 3 seconds to 3 minutes, and those minutes would run out in a dozen seconds. No matter what lay behind the stone door, he had to get out of the deep pool first. He clasped his hands above his head, pushed with his legs, and shot toward the stone doors like a bullet. As he neared, he twisted his body. There was only a 25-centimeter gap between the slabs. The doors slammed shut. The effect died. The water around him wasn't scalding or freezing. It felt oddly pleasant, cool and refreshing, which made no sense at all. The water ahead was clear with a faint blue tint. Visibility stretched for hundreds of meters. Directly opposite, about 400 meters away, 2 more gray stone doors were closed. Beside them was a hemispherical notch that formed a passable hole when the doors were shut. Swimming to that hole would be dangerous. Dozens of nethermoon jellyfish drifted in the water. Last Halloween Eve, Robin had watched that was himself, watch a jellyfish fireworks display in the basement when Robin had helped Ghost Nick. The dazzling jellyfish dance had stolen the show from Patrick. Later, while sneaking into the restricted section for the polyjuice recipe, Hermione had found a book that described the prototype of those fireworks, the nethermoon jellyfish. They were enormous, 12 to 17 meters tall, crystal clear, glowing a pale blue, with mushroom-shaped bells and tassel-like tentacles. When they moved, they were dreamlike, like dancing water spirits. The sight of that fantastical beauty made Robin's stomach clench. He remembered the book's warning all too clearly. An unknown wizard had found nethermoon jellyfish in Loch Ness, along with countless human skeletons and wrecked boats. Slow-moving and elegant didn't mean harmless, but he had to get through that hole. He shoved about 10 gray soft candies, soybean-sized, into his mouth, rolling them back into the hollows of his molars and the gaps in his cheeks. He curled up, kept his wrists and ankles still, and moved only the webs of his hands and feet. He advanced slowly and smoothly, a compact water balloon shape. The jellyfish drifted freely, apparently unaware of him. Their oral arms swayed and several times brushed within half a meter of his curled form. Robin watched the stinging cells pulse. His carotid throbbed, his ears rang, but the more dangerous the situation, the more he had to stay calm. He kept his hand and foot web movements small and steady. Then, a sudden sting lit his big toe. Tingling numbness crawled up his foot until he couldn't feel it at all. He bit down on 2 of the gray candies. The crushed sweets turned to powder and slid down his throat. Warmness spread from his stomach through his limbs, and sensation returned to his right foot. He turned. The jellyfish hung in the water, their long tentacles lashing toward him. From the tips, hooked venomous barbs sprouted from the stinging cells. Whoosh! Whoosh! A barbed tentacle lashed at his upper thigh. He snapped his legs apart and dodged. The tentacle missed and retracted under the bell. Whoosh! Another aimed for his forehead. He leaned back just as a different tentacle shot for his spine. He flung his arms up, rotated his hand webs, twisted his body, and avoided it. Pfft! The next tentacle pierced his arm, its hook catching flesh before pulling back under the bell. The wound didn't burn so much as it went numb. The numbness crawled from his arm to his collarbone, then farther down, straight toward his heart. Robin bit and swallowed all the candies in his mouth, but the numbness kept spreading. In that instant, he remembered the Highland cattle's bone-scraping detoxification skill and activated it. Pain exploded through him, a deep, bone-deep agony, like 10,000 picks digging into his marrow. The pain made him want to grab his longsword and stab himself just to stop it. He curled in on himself, teeth chattering, face drained of color, bloodshot eyes sweeping the water. When tentacles hurtled toward him, he gritted his teeth, shoved his legs to the side, and dodged. A century passed, actually less than 3 minutes, and the agony eased into a series of tiny needles. The numbness in his shoulder and collarbone faded. Robin produced a small round bottle and dropped a few phoenix tears onto the puncture. A white mist rose from the wound, shredded flesh flattened and knit back together. The arm smoothed, the cut vanished. He looked around. The jellyfish were extending and retracting their tentacles wildly. On 2 of them, he saw the hooks at the tips tangled together. Nethermoon jellyfish have no brains. Everything they do is instinct. Whether hooked barbs could unfasten depended entirely on chance. That gave him an idea. He pulled 2 pebbles, each the size of a pigeon egg, from his belt, swung both hands, and sent them flying. The stones struck 2 tentacles on either side. 2 tentacles simultaneously lunged at him. He kicked upward 2 meters to evade, and the hooks on those 2 became entangled. He drifted back to his original lane, lobbed another pebble at a tentacle 7 or 8 meters away. It struck. The tentacle lunged past and retracted without catching. He snatched out an iron rod with a curved tip and hooked the wild tentacle down so it entwined with the other 2. Without a brain, no matter how big their bodies or how potent their venom, the jellyfish were useless if their tentacles were tangled. He grinned in spite of himself. He repeated the routine: strike a tentacle with a pebble, dodge, hook it with the rod, until the tentacles knotted into blue, hydrangea-like tangles, one after another. With the immediate threats neutralized, he swam forward freely, sleek and light as a fish. The notch in the stone doors grew larger and brighter as he closed the distance. He felt elated, even managed a showy triple backflip in the water. He kept track of the meters to the hole: 300, 250, 200, 150. Then a sharp sting prickled his forehead. He clutched his brow, bewildered. Behind him, the jellyfish were tangled and flailing. Ahead and to both sides, the water was clear and empty. But the fleeting pain on his forehead, and the odd numbness that made it impossible to feel even when he pinched himself hard, made one thing clear: he'd been stung again. Not nethermoon jellyfish. Their tentacles were knotted up and far away. Something transparent and venomous was hiding in the water. 200. The underwater world is sticky and slippery. After Robin bit and swallowed 2 small, soft candies, feeling slowly return to his forehead, he took out a bottle of red ink and activated his spore blast. The water in front of him instantly flushed red. The transparent creatures swimming there were no longer invisible. In the crimson water, Robin could make out many transparent jellyfish, each about the size of a pomelo, caps below and tentacles above. Most swam fast and methodically, tracing 1-meter-long figure eights. A few drifted erratically. Robin's suspended position was not on any of the eights. Those were the ones that must have stung his big toe and forehead. The red faded and the creatures blended back into the water. Robin pulled out 3 more bottles of red ink and fired Spore Blast again. The water flared vivid red. He paddled with his webbed hands and feet, threading through or around the figure eights, and swam to a stone gate. He pressed his hands together over his head and pushed through a hole covered by a thick membrane. After prying and tearing it open with his fingernails, he ripped the last of it and slipped into a magnificent underwater world. Seahorses propelled themselves like spouts, one male ejecting hundreds of tiny, shrimp-sized offspring from his expanding belly. A colorful starfish pried a clamshell with its mouthparts and silently devoured the meat. An octopus, the size of a soccer ball, wrapped itself around a crab and smashed it against a rock. The place pulsed with life. He felt his ears itch again. When it passed, he touched behind them and discovered the cracks there had gone from 2 to 3, and his webbed hands and feet had shifted from flesh tones to blue. He guessed the changes were due to moving from freshwater into the sea. Robin angled up and over the spouting seahorses and swam forward. After roughly 1,000 meters, he found a crevice that fell away into blackness. It was a meter wide, with sand piled along each lip. Spider-like crabs, small bodies, and absurdly long legs sifted through the sand for food. As he passed, something clutched in a crab's giant pincer caught his eye. A 1-meter stone rod carved with a fish and an 8-pointed star, the same pattern he'd seen on the flagpole beside the canyon treasure chest on the second map. So this crevice was the canyon. The treasure route on the map, Coconut Grove, Shell Path, Pond Canyon, had changed in the real world into mushroom forest, white earth wasteland, secluded pool, underwater crevice. The world had shifted. A phantom flash rushed past, and Robin instinctively stepped back. The stone rod slammed down where his foot had been. Sand on both sides of the crevice surged and revealed dozens, no, hundreds of triangular crab heads with bright eyes. They clicked their enormous pincers and swarmed toward him. For a blink, he imagined dumping the whole lot into a magma pool for a seafood feast, then thought better of it and dove headfirst into the crevice. The crab swarm crowded the entrance, clacking angrily. Fear beat their hunger. Most of them fanned their long legs and burrowed back into the sand. The crevice, like the giant rocks of Mount Beagle, widened and darkened as it dropped. Robin pulled out a large, luminous pearl. Normally it would light half a soccer field. Here it barely let him see 2 meters around. Staring into the endless black, an intrusive thought rose. He was alone in the world. Loneliness, bewilderment, tension, and fear crashed over him, his chest a drum and his heart pounding. He wanted to turn back, fight the crabs a bit, and head for Mount Beagle, but he refused to be a coward. He pushed deeper. After 7 or 8 minutes, a faint horizontal push of water brushed his left side. Had he misjudged a stroke? He tossed 5 small luminous pearls to the left into the empty dark. They glowed for a few seconds, then whooshed down and vanished. He swam another dozen meters, then felt something graze the sole of his foot. Not painful, not numb, just itchy. He curled like a river shrimp and touched it. His sole came away with a sticky, slippery film. A cold prickle ran down his spine. That push of water had not been an illusion. Something hid in the depths. He uncorked a bottle of fluorescent liquid and triggered Spore Blast once more. The fluorescent specks revealed a grayish-brown fin as broad as a ship's sail, one of the main ship-type sails. Robin exhaled a nervous string of bubbles. The extra-large, luminous pearl slipped from his palm and fell into the darkness. The fluorescent specks dimmed and died. He was plunged into pitch black. Panic turned his breaststroke into frantic dog paddle as he swam downward with everything he had. He felt the fin's owner chasing him. He wouldn't look back. One thought pushed him onward, the bottom. If anything could restrain an abyss monster, it would be there. He swam until his limbs trembled and he lost track of the distance. Suddenly, a sharp pain stabbed his chest and then spread, an immense crushing squeezing from all sides. Water pressure. He had dived too deep. Even a wizard's magic might not withstand this. If he did not ascend soon, he could implode. Now his muscles locked. He couldn't even turn to face upward. Waves of water pressure pressed and then slackened as the monster circled him, diving down and then suddenly upward as if to swallow him whole. As Robin searched for a skill to use, his head bumped something large, cold and slimy. His back struck it too. The thing pushed him upward. The higher they rose, the more the crushing pain eased. At last he could drink and filter water to breathe. A purple light glowed in the distance, larger than a thatched hut, its beam bright enough to illuminate 3 meters around. Robin could finally see the abyss monster. It had a flattened, catfish-like body, roughly 30 meters tall, 200 meters long, and 100 meters wide. Its grayish-brown skin oozed slippery mucus. Between 2 red eyes, each as large as a hut, grew a 15-meter spine protruding forward. At its tip hung a massive, glowing purple light.